Welcome to Talk. This is where we absolutely speak common sense and reflect the views of people around the United Kingdom. The very thing that's killing children, his words, he's not banning. As long as you pay £12.50, Sick Note Britain is thriving. These things can kill. You haven't got to be a dog expert to work that out. Every afternoon here on Talk, you don't want to be going anywhere else. It's as simple, straightforward as that.
Okay, I want to say to you that Asher Gould is on holiday tonight, but I'm joined here today by Gawain Towler, who I think, fingers crossed, will become a board member of Reform UK when they announce the result tomorrow morning. The election shut at 10 o'clock, so it's just a couple of minutes ago. If you voted, give us a call and tell us who you voted for. Assuming it was, I think it's going to be Darren Grimes, Gawain Towler and Michael Heaver that win, but we don't know, do we, Gawain?
Well, of course, it's all over by the counting.
What'll be interesting about this, and we will talk about the immigration crisis and all of the Afghans that have come and all that sort of thing. But first, I mean, I think it is interesting because if you, Darren Grimes and Michael Heaver don't win, then what we think we know about reform will not be true.
At all.
Yes, exactly.
There were 17 candidates.
Yes.
Only 2 were women.
Yes.
I suspect that Maxine Fothergill's going to do very well.
Right.
Because, honestly, it does no bad thing. And there are hundreds of thousands, at least 100,000 members who are women.
Yes.
And not having a woman at the top table, I think, is not a brilliant thing.
Yeah.
And so I think Maxine will do
I think that's actually,
well
funnily enough,
indeed.
it's exactly the same as my mother, who was a Labour Party, well, my dad was a Labour Party member, my mother supported him, but they always, unbeknownst to my dad, used to vote against each other. He'd vote Labour and my mum would vote Conservative. But she actually said the sole reason was in 1979, when there was a woman candidate for Prime Minister, she'd got so irked by the whole women can't do it thing during the election that she'd thought, well, it's about time a woman did it.
It's also, and I think, because we're accused of being gassed in so many ways,
yes,
I think that the membership, in a reaction to that, will say, OK, there's a woman candidate, there's a gay candidate, there aren't any people of colour this time.
Yes.
But historically, when I think of the tribe and how it's voted in the past and these things, they will vote for those people, in part, one, because they're competent and decent, but also, we're not. And we prove it by voting that way.
Yeah.
And so, but Max, of the 17 candidates, I would say at least 15 of them will do a very good job. In fact, probably all 17 would do a good job.
Yes.
So I'm not worried.
So let me ask you about this, and this is about reform strategy this week. Robert Jenrick. So obviously Robert Jenrick is now very, very anti-immigration, but as Immigration Minister, his first interview, he's a lot bigger in those days, that's a Zempic City.
Yes,
they all say they're doing it the hard way, don't they? Right, but they're not. They're all doing it with the Zempic.
Could he have climbed that pole? What you saw with Robert.
And just to remind people the story, this is Robert Jenrick saying that he denied that Suella Braverman was reducing the number of hotels for migrants. He said that she'd increased them and he had turbocharged, quote unquote, turbocharged that process.
Well, he did, and at the time, he was proud of it.
Yes, he was.
But I don't deny, I really don't, I think Jenrick's conversion is
genuine.
Is real. But only a couple of years ago, he was boasting about increasing the number of hotels. But right now, you see him climbing up these poles and nailing his flag to other people's masts.
I suppose the background to all of this is this remarkable thing. We saw it once again with Ben Wallace with the Afghan resettlement scheme. Now, Wayne, I'm sorry, I'm not generally a conspiracy theorist.
Nope.
I believe that the Afghan resettlement scheme is a scam. I personally believe that people in the MOD have deliberately talked it up in order to bring 100,000 people to the country who don't deserve to be here. Now, you can disagree with that, but either way, we saw Ben Wallace on the TV the other day saying that he was proud of the Afghan resettlement scheme. So you've got Jenrick saying that turbocharging the number of hotels was great, or being gleeful about it. You've got then Ben Wallace saying the Afghan resettlement scheme's great. Boris hasn't apologised for the Boris wave.
Well, where is Boris?
Well, that's right. You and I started as Conservative staffers. They're so away with the fairies now on immigration now.
They are. As I say, I think Jenrick's conversion is genuine.
Yes.
But it's very late in the day.
Yes.
But he's out there on his own. The rest of the party are nowhere near him. He's doing his stuff. And from our perspective, crack on. Because... as I said to him myself, I said, Robert, I love the checks you're writing, but the party's never going to cash them.
I'll tell you what, so that everyone can decide what they think of this. I mean, I've gone slightly off-piste by talking about Robert Jenrick, but we've got the clip anyway. So why don't we? We've got Adam in the gallery looking through the clip file. We've got the Robert Jenrick thing. Look, just to be clear, this was before his supposed road to Damascus conversion. But here is what he said at the time.
We have procured more hotels very rapidly, and more are coming on board literally every day. More hotels have been coming online almost every month throughout the whole of this year. So Suella Braverman and her predecessor, Priti Patel, were procuring more hotels. What I have done in my short tenure is ramp that up and procure even more.
Oh, it's not turbocharged, it's ramped it up.
Well... I'm trying to be fair.
Well, it's not so much being fair or being unfair. I mean, I have a real problem here, which is this. We on this show, and thank you for making your first appearance on it. We on this show support taking back control of the Labour Party, of the Conservatives being real Conservatives.
Yep.
I, as you know, for years, I never joined UKIP because I believed it was an allergic reaction, and I still believed the Conservatives could be brought back. But now I honestly think that the Conservatives are much more likely to join the Liberal Democrats, the Conservative MPs, that is. The members are still all right, but they always were.
I've always said that would take sort of 3-4% of the Lords, the Tory Lords, 5-10% of their
members of Parliament,
about 15-20% of their councillors, about 80% of the members, and most of their voters.
That's right.
And that's the pyramid. There are good people in the Tory Party, of course there are.
Yeah.
There are good people in the Labour Party.
Yes.
And there just are. However, I cannot see the Tory Party being able to... Jenrick's out on his own.
Yes.
He's out on his own. Look at what Kemi did. She has policies. Some of the things she's producing are actually quite sane. There's some good stuff that they're doing, but nobody cares.
Yes.
But then you look at what she's done. These are the policies, this is what she says, and then what she's done. Bringing back someone like Francis Maud, bringing back Henry Newman, bringing back James Cleverly. It seems to me that the actual focus is to fight the Lib Dems. They've given up.
Yes.
On the right.
Well, what they've done is they've said we are no longer a national party, we'll try and defend the home county. But what about this idea, which I think is really interesting? Now, it raises questions, but should a future Reform government fail to stop the small boats, there is this suggestion that they will change the law and house the resulting people in the constituencies of members of Parliament who voted in favour of uncontrolled immigration. Gawain, please, the election's over for Board. Tell me you support that plan.
Yes and no. No, I think we can do it better than that.
Do you?
In the sense that would just be malice. No, it would be fun,
but
it'd be malicious. And we've got to be much more serious than that. And the fact is, if the polling continues over the next few years, like it or loathe it, we could well be in government. And if so, we're not just governing for our partisans, we're governing for the whole country. In a modern democracy, if you get 40%, you're doing well. That means 60% don't trust you.
Yes.
You've got to govern for everybody.
I suppose
and so doing something like that, which would be fun...
Yes.
No.
We've had loads of people...
Have camps, arrest, detain, deport. Do not pass by HMOs. Do not pass by hotels. Do not pass by anything. Anybody who arrives here through an illegal thing never, ever gets leave for a night.
Here's another thing that Reform could do, and I think they need to commit. I worry sometimes... No, actually, I'll be honest about Reform. Reform are ramping up their internal policy operation, right? So I think that's important because they need a programme for government.
You look at their website, and jobs offered, there's a Scottish policy offer, there's a Welsh policy offer, there's other things going on.
Yeah.
We are ramping up. We have to.
But what is the legal prohibition, even under the existing law, to allowing a small boat? So Australia did various things, and we always go on about Australia. But one of them is small boat arrives, the Royal Navy meets them in international waters, repairs the boat, gives them food, gives them life vests, and leaves them. And they will do that as many times as you like. Now, my argument is, if you stop them in international waters, now you make sure the boat doesn't sink.
There is no international waters in the Channel.
Oh, OK, go on.
Because the national waters are too close.
Yes.
France and the UK are too close, so there's no international
an area
water
that you're allowed
zone.
to sail in even without the permission of the UK or France, isn't there?
There are ways and means.
Yes.
And the International Law of the Sea and ICLOS and things of this sort. But Oh, no, you make it very, very clear. And it's not so much in the channel. What matters is the incentives once they arrive.
Yes.
So if you change the incentive structure, there's no point in coming in.
Let me pull you up and say, right, why don't you... I mean, the election's over now, so don't worry too much. But let's be granular. If you become a board member of Reform tomorrow at 10 a.m, what will you want to see Reform say in order to stop the boats? What should be in the manifesto?
Immediately, as I say, it's not really about what happens in the channel.
Right.
It's what happens with the incentive structure.
OK.
Essentially, if you let people know, very loudly, do an advertising campaign in various parts of the world, if you arrive in the UK in a legal fashion, through the boats or through trucks or whatever, you will never, ever, ever get leave to remain, no matter how much you've had a miserable life.
Yes.
That way...
So that will automatically disqualify you.
No point in taking a boat.
Right.
Because whoever you are, whatever's happened, you will never get leave to remain. You change the incentive structure. If you do that, forget smashing the gangs. If the gangs can't make money, they self-smash.
Yes.
They cease to exist because there's no purpose of them.
That's right.
And many of the people who come over, and some are real asylum seekers, of course.
Yes.
But many of the people who come over, these are people who've paid a lot of money. I mean, money that, honestly, I don't have that sort of spare cash.
Yes. So
they're not the poorest people in their countries. They are people who in many ways are middle class in their countries.
But what about this guy? So I love the Sun newspaper. Obviously, they're in the same building as us, and they've helped us out with loads and loads of things over the years. But I think they were simply wrong about this guy on TikTok. When they said he points up to the sky, he's saying there is one God, Allah. And when he goes on TikTok, he says the following. He says, "Don't be stingy, brothers. Allah would want you to spend this money in order to come here." Now, they watched that as it all about getting a job and being incentivised and whatever. I saw it as a plain message. We want to make Britain an Islamic country. Now, I have no problem with Muslim immigration. I have a problem with specifically coming here in order to change the population. And that's what I believe he was talking about.
I don't think he was trying to change the population.
OK.
But Islam is a proselytising religion.
Yes.
It just is. Look at its history right back from the start. That's what it does. And it also has an issue. If it once held a land...
Yes.
It
believes it's a land forever.
Their land.
Yes.
Thus the issue with what's going on in the Middle East.
Yes.
Thus with the Islamic Caliphate demanding that half of France and half of Spain are in fact Islamic lands. Of course,
I think it's worth pointing out, part of the problem with Israel is precisely that. What Israel is doing is going, we've got no space for housing and this is empty. Well, of course, the Islamic view on it is because Muslims have ever owned that, therefore it must be always reserved.
Forever Islamic. Yes. And that is part of, it's not so much Quranic rules, but it is part of a culture and belief system. And once it is, if a land has ever been Islamic, it is forever Islamic.
Yes.
And that's why you sometimes see these weird things that Islam built Britain.
Yes.
What? But that's part of that way of thinking.
Is that because they effectively say that? I mean, well, I've seen people say Jesus worshipped Allah because obviously Allah is the Arabic word for God, and he may well have.
And the Coptic Church, the Coptic Church in Egypt, uses the word Allah for God. Yeah. Because that is the word for God.
Let me ask you this question, just quickly before we go to the break, because we've got all these questions about immigration. Let's forget you as a reform politician for a second and talk about the fact that you started, the principal part of your career was to have been an advisor in the European Parliament, initially to a right-wing Conservative, then to Nigel Farage. Well, all right, we can.
A delightful Conservative. I'll put Nudge in the delightful Conservative.
OK. What are these lot up to? Because when I mixed with my old Conservative friends, well, when I still mix with my old Conservative friends and indeed Labour friends of mine,
Peter's coming in later.
They don't sit there. Yeah, that's right. They don't sit there and say, "Isn't it great we hoodwinked the public into uncontrolled immigration?" That's not what they say. It's much more an incompetence thing than it is that, isn't it?
I don't think it was the plan.
No.
Now, in some cases in Labour, one feels it was the plan. Whereas with Conservatives, they just didn't know what the devil they were doing. They want to be nice.
Yes.
They do want to be nice. And I fear we are a country that's always wanted to be nice. We're quite good at being nice.
Yes.
But there's a paradigm shift. I go up and down the country all the time, doing public meetings up and down the country. And what I see is a rapid hardening of the mood.
Yes.
There is a paradigm shift, where in the past, and I was one, I was proud of our history of welcoming asylum seekers and all the rest of it. Between 1947 and 1997, it was an average around 56 to 60,000 people came.
Yes.
No problem at all.
No.
And then it changed.
Yes.
And these days, where in the past people have said, we're proud of that tradition, they're now saying, we don't care.
Yes.
We don't wish people harm, but we no longer
absolutely
care.
Now your mic is going to have to move ever so slightly, but I'll tell you one thing that just upsets me. It's the way that we're expected to take people, whoever they are and wherever they've come from. And of course, the Afghan data leak, people forget, is a critical shift. It's now, first of all, anyone who comes to the UK is entitled to human rights. Anyone who has interacted with the UK government anywhere in the world now is entitled to assert their human rights in the UK. That could open the door for lots of people. I'll tell you what we're going to do, because Adam has done well on the clips. Let's watch this gentleman who was on TikTok talking about immigration to the UK. See what you think about whether we actually believe that he's talking about coming to Britain in order to help the country out, or whether he's talking about some sort of jihad. Go for it.
کس مادرها کشور خوارتان خونه است مادرتان نگاین کس فروش دوستایی که میخواین بین بهترین جای است زدنی جای است بخی بیا این تو چشم تنگ نباش کسش کشورت با بیت خونه است که تقدر بخیل هستی.
We should have done the translation. We didn't do the translation. I'll tell you what we'll do. For those of you that were listening and don't speak Arabic, I'll try and voice over it a little bit later. But I think Adam's gold star has fallen off. Back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Okay, this is Andre Walker. Asher Gould is on holiday. We're here with Gawain Towler, who's an old friend of mine. I think we met in the Midland Bar in Manchester in about 1066 or something.
Harold was just down the road.
Yeah. Okay, just to explain that Gawain Towler is participating in the board election for reform. The polls closed 20 minutes ago or thereabouts, and the election result is expected tomorrow. Other candidates include Michael Heaver, who you've probably heard of, Darren Grimes, you've probably heard of, Alex Wilson, the Assembly member we've heard of, and there will be some other local people as well.
There are other people with good, solid local support. Dan Barker in the Northwest, who was the Reform mayoral candidate in Manchester.
And there was some controversy surrounding you, but not of you, when Zia Youssef decided that you would no longer be the press secretary to Nigel Farage after about 150 years.
I wasn't Nigel's press secretary. I was the party's
right.
head of press.
Well, that is slightly different.
But and he was the boss. He has the right to sack somebody.
Yeah.
I didn't fit how he wanted to.
Although I always got the impression it was much more to do with the general shake-up than there was any personal animosity between you and Zia.
I don't think there was animosity. It was just I didn't fit the way he did things, and honestly, I didn't necessarily do what he told me to do. So he has the right to.
We've never done what people have told you to do.
No.
I mean, Nigel likes you because he's so scattergun it didn't matter that you didn't do what he told you to do.
It's also things have changed.
Yeah,
we were more piratical than in the Navy.
I'd get the impression actually
and we're now a party that could well be the government. So that approach may not.
It's the reason. I mean, obviously, commenting on your own sacking is a bit unfair, but if I'd have moved you on, it would have been because where you are brilliant is, and I don't mean this absolutely literally, is the sort of sitting around with a cigarette in a private members club briefing the Times rather than issuing 1,000 press releases a week. That would be my reason for doing it.
I was never a press release guy.
No.
To me, it's about relationships rather than sort of broadsides.
Yeah. So you could spin a gaggle, so to speak. Sorry, should explain what that is. You could give Nigel Farage's position to a group of journalists, but the grind it out day after day, lobby copy.
Not my way of doing. And whilst I get on with it, I didn't really like his approach. It didn't work with me, and I wasn't going to sit there and just do what I was told.
It was funny actually with Zia because he was a great guy, but clearly so focused, it actually became a bit control freaky, and then he melted his own brain. Anyway, I'm not going to get Gawain to comment on that because he's starting to grimace. We'll go to the phone. He melted his own skull. Says newly elected. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. Purely my opinion. Gawain is purely here to comment and make his own thing. Okay, so Georgina is in London. Georgina, you're through to talk.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Andre. Good evening, Gawain. And good luck with the upcoming election. We think you're fabulous. And can I just correct you? It's not if Reform will be the next government. Reform will definitely be the next government. Yeah. We've already tried the Conservatives, Gawain. Not worth a blow on a ragman, and then now we have got this Labour government, which, my goodness, it's just getting from.
But what you've just said, and Gawain just had a problem with his earpiece there, so I can basically brief him in one sentence. You're basically saying that Reform will be the next government, but you are only saying it because of the failure of the existing political parties. What about the positive build for Reform?
Well, the positive build is they have the best intentions for Britain, the Indigenous population, the economy. They are working towards that. We're not having a load of...
Do you mind if I put that very quickly to Gawain? Because I think that's been one of the issues that has come up most, hasn't it? It's who shares my values. And increasingly, people feel the Westminster elite don't share their values at all.
It is. But I'm actually, the original thing that was said, I think, is true. Nobody wins a first term on their own policies.
Right.
They win a first term on how rubbish the previous government was.
Yeah.
Labour won, not because they were any good,
True.
It's because the Tories were rubbish. And then you go back and it was the same. Major's government's rubbish. Blair
yeah, because if you don't want change, you don't want change, right?
Labour's government's rubbish, Thatcher came, and so on and so forth. But you win a second term on your own policies. But that being said, and I think the fact that both the Tories and Labour have shown themselves to be utterly useless over the last 10 years, is the case. However, you're right in that I think everybody knows that Reform absolutely passionately care about this country and its people.
Yes.
And that vibe, that side of things. However, we still have to prove, both through personnel and policy, that we are worthy of the votes of our people.
Yes, but Georgina draws a distinction, and it's a distinction that I think you and I instinctively dislike, but understand why she's saying it, the Indigenous people of this country. Look, nobody wants to be nasty to anybody who's a recent migrant, or families particularly who've come over here, say the Windrush generation or whatever. But increasingly, there is a feeling, not that Britain's an apartheid state, 'cause to compare it to South Africa would be a little bit grotesque, but at the same time feel like the government's not in it for the people that built the country, for the backbone of the country, for the hard work.
We're often told that, in fact, it was migrants that built the country.
Yes, that's right.
Constantly. It was only migrants that built the country. Well, no. The numbers were tiny. Hey, they did hard work.
Lot, yeah.
They did a great deal, but no. It was not. The hospitals that were not built, the railways were not built. Actually, Irish did a lot of the railways, the canals and all the rest of it. But the point is,
there weren't many Italian asphalters, but they did exist.
We are sold a lie constantly by the government to tell us that everybody other than ourselves was involved in the creation of our country. But we know it's a lie.
Yes.
And so do the vast majority of the country. And therefore, having a party that says, that's rubbish, we all know it's rubbish, actually, we should be proud of our own people, our own country, and the people who did create this country.
So I guess you're saying then, actually it becomes very easy when you go, no, migrants didn't build Britain, we're all right with them, but they didn't build Britain.
Yeah,
so let's just start from the correct...
Precisely. I have no issue. However, stop lying to us.
Yes.
Stop denigrating the people of this country, the people who've been here for generation after generation, who actually did build the country.
But how do I then deal with that attitude, which I understand comes from a good place? But say my mum and dad came here from Pakistan or came here from the Caribbean. It's one of these Commonwealth countries. What do I then say? Well, look, you know, I like this whole message about immigration. Good. I'm not in favour of uncontrolled immigration, but I get the feeling from what Farage says he's a bit of a racist. I appreciate that's not true. I get the impression that it would be more hostile for me if these people came into power. Would I think people do feel like that.
Yes, it's like Tebbett's cricket test and all the rest of it. I think that, it isn't true, and I think the proof of the pudding is going to be in the eating. There is a very big difference between those who have been here for a fair amount, a couple of generations or the rest of it, and have shown and have proven over that time that loyalty, that commitment to this country, and those who have arrived in the last few years, where we see a lack of that commitment. And there's...
I mean, let's be clear.
Farage,
the Windrush people were never offered. Now, some of them may have ended up on benefits, but they simply were not told, come to Britain to claim benefits.
No.
There was nobody in the Caribbean being told that.
They absolutely came to work.
Yes.
But the numbers were tiny.
Yes.
The numbers were tiny. And they were...
I mean, 50,000 a year was considered enormous in 1965.
Absolutely. And today, that would be
We'd be jumping for joy.
Precisely. So, but the numbers were tiny, and I can see why some people would be concerned merely because of the mood music.
Yeah. And I think the other concern, and we are going to fix your earpiece, but what we'll do is we'll come back to Georgina and Philippa after the break. But just in terms of the whole ethnic voting, I live near Slough. We believe that Slough's going to get an Islamist MP. We don't know which particular candidate Jezbollah is going to select, but we believe they're going to win. So there could be a scenario, and it's something that you're going to have to think about, where there is a perception that white people vote reform and non-white people vote Jezbollah.
But that's clearly not true. And I think what one sees, I think there's a by-election in Hounslow tonight, where I believe there's a Sikh standing for reform.
Right.
It's clearly not true, and I don't think it's white or non-white. I know...
Do you think I'm wrong to think that perception exists?
I think that perception exists, but I think it's a perception that is created mostly by middle-class white people who are desperate to try and create that perception.
Yeah.
I think there is a full understanding of the deep loyalty of many Commonwealth migrants in this country.
Yes.
Particularly those who arrived a while back.
I mean, there's even. I mean, if you watch Goodness Gracious Me and you see the couple that are trying to anglicise,
the Coupars.
It's pronounced Cooper.
Yes,
Mr. Cooper. It's pronounced Cooper. But actually,
that was a comedy because it was true.
Without doubt.
And there is it is if you look at previous previous investigations into this, it's clearly not the case. However, I do understand that perception, because that is perception. It's one of the few things the left's got left.
Yes,
because they can't argue about anything else, so they make these allegations and push it and push it and push it. But okay, we were talking about Zia earlier. One of the key figures in reform.
Yeah.
He's a Muslim born in Scotland.
And actually, one of the things, I think we can bring Georgina back, because you've got your ear in that back now. One of the things, of course, about Zia was the left gave him enormous amounts of racism by saying that he was selling his people out. He was going against... I mean, he's Scottish.
I remember during the Brexit Party days...
Georgina, you are now back. Sorry, go on.
I remember during the Brexit Party days when we won the European election. The Brexit MEPs made up more than 50% of all the non-white MEPs in the European Parliament, not just in the UK, in the European Parliament, but we were the dodgy racists.
Yeah.
And it is just not the case.
Yeah. OK, Georgina, thanks for that. You did mention on air that you feared you'd been forgotten. Georgina, what's your response to all that? Apologies that you couldn't talk directly to Gawain. You can now.
Well, I think personally that Reform are offering what the British people need. They're not waffling, like I said before, Gwen. I know exactly what the problem is with the present government. If I may say, am I allowed to say what I feel about what's going wrong at the moment?
Please do, yeah.
OK, well, I'm going to waffle on. Just switch me off if I get too much, and I'll be glad it's not life support. OK, with Keir Starmer, we've got a man here who's penalised every working and middle-class taxpayer in the UK. He's a man who has broken every promise that he made in his political manifesto, a man who has stabbed our farmers, waspy women, fishing industry, our elderly and disabled in the back, whilst his other hand has signed a death knell for our independence from the EU, as well as putting our small businesses out of business. We have a man who was charged headlong into a brick wall that is net zero, spending billions on an ideology that is utter madness. This money's better spent elsewhere. A man who is bankrupting our country and having taxes raised so high that we can ill afford to live, whilst the most vulnerable live in penury. You know, he was welcoming migrants, giving them incentives that has them living in luxury. They've never had it so good at the expense of every tax-paying man and woman in this country. You know, he's a man who lies barefaced both to the world leaders and to the indigenous population of our once Great Britain. He's a man who believes in nothing and makes us look weak and incompetent on the global stage. He's a man who has taken away our freedom of speech and to stop laughing. And
I'm not laughing.
To take away our freedom of movement and our cultural identity. And this is freedom that our past forefathers have died to give us. He's a man that's blind, he can't see the wood for the trees, and so selectively deaf, he can't hear the pleas of the British people for help. A man who has created an Orwellian and dysfunctional society that's coming apart at the seams and is ruled over by a two-tier, politicised judicial system. In fact, he is a nowhere man.
OK, Georgina, I think that's absolutely fantastic, but I wanted, before the break, to ask Gawain, you know, over what, a probably 30-year political career, admittedly, as a staffer, A, how often did you hear stuff like that 20 years ago? And B, how often do you not hear it today at the public events?
25, 30 years ago when I started, very, very rarely, if at all.
Yes.
And if it was heard at all, it was dismissed
as ridiculous, a bit over the top.
Today, I hear it on a weekly basis, daily
basis. Yes. I mean, I suspect that
this is the hardening of mood. And
I mean, she has articulated that particularly well, but it has to be said. I imagine at every public meeting you go to, three-quarters of the audience feel that way.
Oh, very, very much so. They don't necessarily articulate it as well as Georgina just did, but the general mood on almost every single point she made is something that is...
But are people... Thank you so much, Georgina. We'll go to Philip after the break. But let me ask you this. You don't need the earpiece now. We're going to fix it. And honestly, I've never seen anyone mess about with the earpiece that much. But...
given the size of my ears, that's amazing.
Have people given up on the country? Because I worry very much so on my YouTube that there are a group of people who say... we can do this, we can fix the country, we can turn it around, and another group who go, it's finished, it's all over?
I think some people are beginning to give up, but I think what reform does offer is hope to those people, which means the responsibility on reform is huge.
Yes.
Not only do we have to win, and we feel this is not a question, we have to win because we look at this government and what it's proposing.
Can the country live another 5 years?
Precisely. But having won, we cannot fail.
No.
We have to deliver on a large area of these policies.
But you've got, but your issue is, you're going to have to do Trump 2, not Trump 1.
Yep.
God, you couldn't have said that 20 years ago.
100%.
And what I mean to say by that is, Donald Trump in the first term of office hadn't realised that draining the swamp was day one. I mean, we were talking about the House of Lords and my own view about the House of Lords, which is a depoliticised, term-limited, but still appointed House of Lords. And what somebody was saying to me, in fact, it was my dad who was saying to me, if you do not appoint 300 reform peers day one, you will be sunk completely. They will stop the whole legislative agenda.
The idea that Starmer is not going to even start that process, he is deliberately creating a constitutional crisis.
Yes.
That's on him.
Yes.
He really has to start.
I'll tell you what, that sounds like an important point. Why don't we leave it until after the break when we're also going to be talking to Philippa? More next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, we were just talking in the break about this ludicrous situation with the House of Lords and Nigel Farage not being given any peers at the moment, and the situation with HOLAC, the House of Lords Appointments Commission, who wanted to take away the right of the Prime Minister to appoint peers at all. Thankfully, the House of Lords voted against that, but very clearly, in order to do what Tony Blair's done with everything, take it out to the field of politics. Yeah, what that means is put a bunch of lefties in there and never be able to do anything. But look, I think Nigel Farage, Gawain, has to get rid of HOLAC and say, I'm responsible and I'm going to make a responsible appointments policy. And that appointments policy for me, Gawain, is as follows. We need an emergency reform delegation. I mean, before then, but then when he's Prime Minister. But next, the next point to make is we're going to put in, say, a term limit. Now, I think if you give peers 2 parliaments, then what you can do is you can appoint them for another 2 parliaments because there's an unlimited appointments. It just means you don't have people for 40 years.
Yes, I get that. And I do get that. If they can come back, because some people are really good and some people they discover they're not.
Exactly.
But there's also...
Yeah, you can be appointed. I mean, the other thing you could do, I mean, I know they wouldn't adopt this, but you could be appointed as a baron, and then 2 parliaments later, you could be appointed as a viscount, and do you see what I mean? And rise through the ranks.
In my romantic sense, I'd like to get rid of all the lifers and replace them, bring all the hereditaries back, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But that's
I think part of the problem with bringing the hereditaries back, in all honesty, Gawain, is the fact that they've been thrown out of their own areas.
It's not going to happen, so it is a romantic sense. I quite like it in the romantic way. However...
But tell me about the constitutional crisis, because we are going to film.
Well, this is the point. If you do not appoint enough peers to carry government legislation to the House of Lords, you have a constitutional crisis. Because the Lords are governed a bit by convention, not a rule, but a convention, which states that if a government is elected, its manifesto commitments the Lords cannot block.
Yes.
This came up after the Second World War. Labour came in, they didn't have a majority of the House of Lords. The Tories and the Lords went, you know what, fair's fair, we have to allow that to happen. One, that honour aspect in the House of Lords, which was a hereditary thing, no longer exists.
No.
Honour no longer exists in politics.
Yes.
And we saw during the Brexit period, this is something that was passed by the country.
Yes.
And the Lords, being the sort of people they are, know that they're morally better than us. They know they're far more intelligent than us. They, frankly, they see as their role in many of them, not all, but most of
preventing
them,
democracy.
They see their role is to protect the public from their own democratic instincts.
Yes, their own stupidity is what they mean.
Frankly, yes, and that is a huge problem. So, in the time after a general election, say Farage, Reform win an absolute majority, and look at today's polls. It's entirely possible. Say he wins, and he goes to the king, kisses hands and says, thank you, sire, for having the trust in me that I can have a majority
and
in
the king goes,
House.
I can't stand you.
Yeah, but that's tough. That's
that's right.
And he said, okay, kiss hands, you are my first minister, first Lord of the Treasury, and oh, by the way, here's 200 peers that you need to sign off on. And in the time between the election, the kissing of hands, and becoming the Prime Minister, the First Lord of the Treasury, and the first sitting of the House, there is a period there where the Prime Minister can act without the various breaks that the establishment created.
Right.
So in that very short period,
right,
he has the constitutional right to do stuff.
Right.
As soon as the House sits, that's over.
Got it.
And we go back to the normal process.
Got it.
So there is that opportunity. But that means that Reform do not just have to come up with 630 decent candidates who are solid and reasonable and respectful. They don't just have to come up with
all the special advisors, the parliamentary assistants.
But they also have to come up with 300 people who can do the House of Lords thing.
Yes.
And on walking through the doors of the House, they're instantly ministers.
Yeah.
Many of them instantly ministers. Now, there are people in the Lords who will help. Claire Fox won't join Reform, but she will help mentor and train. There are people up there who will mentor and train. And there's one thing, there's what the Lib Dems did. When the hereditaries were thrown out, what the Lib Dems did is they made many of their old hereditaries lifers because they knew the committees, they knew the system. And that is something that I would guess Reform would do.
So Viscount Thurso was abolished as a member of the House of Lords, became an MP, and then got a life peerage. So
Precisely.
I think he's the last person who will ever do that.
To do all three things.
Okay, Philippa, I'm so sorry that we were so slow to get to you, but this is Philippa in Poole in Dorset. You're through to talk.
Andre, lovely to speak to you and Gawain this evening. And it's actually fine hearing you both speak and talking about these issues, which are so important. I just want to say to Gawain, you're going to have no problem being on the Reform board tomorrow. You are going to win that seat.
Are you a Reform member? Did you vote for him?
I am a Reform member, and yes, I did vote for Gawain.
Just a matter of interest. And look, I always say, because you're a caller rather than a contributor, you don't have to answer any of my questions. But who did you actually vote for? Do you mind me asking?
What, in the last general election?
No, in the board election for Reform UK.
Oh, for Gawain.
Oh, but you had 3 votes.
Yeah. And the lady, I've forgotten her first name now, McIver, and also Michael as well.
Karen. So Michael Lever, Karen McIver, and
Karen McIver.
Yourself.
I'll be coming down to Poole in a few weeks' time. I've just been booked into the branch event there.
Oh, really?
And I'm a chap from Wimborne, so it's a part of the world I know very well indeed.
How do you, Philippa, just a matter of interest. Philippa, just a matter of interest. How do you think Reform's going to do in your area?
I think we're going to do very, very well because Poole has traditionally been quite a conservative area. So I think that...
And Labour won by a squeak in Poole, I think, less than 50 votes.
Yes.
I'm confident, and I'm told that the branch down in Poole is excellent. And as I say, I'm coming down next month, I think, to do.
What about Dorset as a whole, Gawain?
Dorset as a whole, the Lib Dems have done very well. The Tories have
traditionally.
just given up. Yes, I mean, mid Dorset is now solid Lib Dem. I think Bournemouth, particularly given the situation in Bournemouth right now, Poole, Christchurch Poole is going to go reform.
Yes.
South Dorset has always been a Labour Tory marginal.
Just remind me, because you and I know Conor Burns, presumably you worked with him.
No.
So Conor lost Bournemouth West for the Conservatives.
Yep.
Presumably Bournemouth East went as well. What's his name?
Labour.
Yeah, they both went Labour.
And so did Poole, as did South Dorset.
Yes.
But West Dorset used to be Oliver Letwin's seat. That's solid Lib Dem now. And looking at the current projections, North Dorset goes Lib Dem. It's currently Tory, but it goes Lib Dem.
Is there an element here, and I'll put this first to Gawain and then to Philippa, is there an element where there was a reluctance of Conservatives to dump the Conservative Party when they had a sitting Conservative MP in their area, but once that sitting Conservative MP lost, there was kind of... I mean, if you look at Lee in Lancashire, right, I mean, I think... Reform came a bit above the Conservatives, but there was a sitting Conservative MP. Admittedly, he stood down. I think now, at the next election, Lee will get almost no Conservative voters and will become a relatively safe Reform seat.
And Philip will probably know, in a place like Poole, the likelihood that it's going to be very similar. But one of the things I think is slightly misread by the pollsters right now when it comes to how well the Lib Dems are looking, and they are looking very good, is that I think of those people who switched from Tories to Lib Dems at the last election, 40% did so because they were so annoyed about immigration.
Yes.
Basically, they looked, who gets rid of a Tory? I'll vote Lib Dem.
Yes.
So in some areas, West Dorset, they voted Lib Dem to get rid of the Tories because they were so fed up with the Tories. But the Lib Dems, like the Greens, are very sticky. Once they're in, they're very hard to get out again.
Yes, they are. Because the great thing about the Lib Dems, and this is something that historically Reform have struggled with, simply because, or let's call it Reform Brexit UKIP, right? That, if you like, the Nigel Farage thing. Yeah. What has happened historically is the lack of people on the ground. Not that you've got no people. No, it's not. But there weren't the people to put out the leaflets about hyper-local issues. But that has changed.
That's not true anymore. And what maybe even head office don't realise this, is that the sheer amount of work going on in constituencies where there are no elections. There are no by-elections, there are no elections. But every week, teams are going out delivering.
Yes.
And there's no elections.
Yes.
So that work now, we have learnt a great deal from the Lib Dems.
Yes.
The Lib Dems were brilliant at this, and they are brilliant at this. But we've learnt a great deal from that. And our people, you've got to remember, in the last year, we've gone from 40,000 to 230,000. These people are terribly enthusiastic, they're committed, they're keen. And they are... I see it everywhere.
How many of them? Do you know what? We're going to say thank you to Philippa. We're going to stick with Gawain Tyler because I know from the messages that are coming in, you're finding this whole discussion fascinating. But I am being basically killed with vicious looks from my gallery about the fact we keep moving, we keep forgetting the breaks. But OK, let's go to the break. We'll be back with Gawain Tyler in a second.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, well, this is the Late Show with Andre Walker. Ashley Gould's on holiday, and Gawain and I obviously were talking during the break because I'm fascinated by this, and I will tell you about my falling out with the Conservatives, and actually it's based on the fact that I live in the Windsor constituency. I saw the way that they attempted to rig that selection. Now, there is a good thing about Windsor that people forget. Because obviously of the royal connection, whatever, they are the world's leading experts about binning off carpetbaggers, right? So they just, every job that's ever applied for in the local council, they know for a fact that people will try and come along and just do it for lifestyle reasons. And so when the Buffton Tuftons all arrived in Windsor, and certainly, you know, the Conservative Central Office was so determined to corrupt the system and put in their mates, Windsor was ready for it day one, and in the end got a decent member of Parliament.
Yeah.
But it has to be said, up and down the country, certainly my view was...
He comes from Angela Renner's constituency, and
Yes.
he is so annoyed that he's not actually in Angela Renner's constituency to get rid of her.
Absolutely. But I think that was the thing. I mean, it's not that relevant to this discussion, but the fact that Conservative Central Office was so corrupt when it came to selections, and the end result is the awful Conservative bench that went into the 2024 general election. I mean, almost as bad as the Labour bench now, which is, I think, without question, the most talentless group of people I've ever met.
I was talking to somebody today, and it's... I was a very weird child, but as a...
Were you really, Gawain? That surprises me.
As a 15-year-old, I could name you both front benches.
Wow.
As a 25-year-old, I can name you both front benches. As a 35-year-old, I can name you both front benches. I can just do it at 45. Today,
no.
I can name... And I'm an anorak. I'm into this. This is what I do. And I can name you about 6, 7, or 8 maybe on Labour.
Do you know, it's exactly...
And about 5, 6 on the Tory front bench. And the rest are minimal.
I found myself the other day, I was on the phone to somebody, doesn't matter who it was, nobody particularly significant.
Who's the Tories Foreign Affairs section?
Right.
I don't know.
So,
honestly, I don't know.
So there was a reshuffle.
One of the major officers of state.
Somebody said to me the other day, hasn't there been a reshuffle amongst the Conservatives recently? I went, has there? But it's the James Cleverly return.
Became housing.
Yes. I'll tell you what was interesting. I went to a dinner with James Cleverly, who I like very much.
Yep,
yeah,
nice
absolutely.
chap.
And what he did was he stood up, and we were talking about the small boats, and he put a full stop where there should have been a comma. And let me explain what I mean by that, because he said, when I was Home Secretary, I got blamed for all the small boats coming, but it wasn't my fault. I went into the Home Office and I said, let's stop them, let's do this, let's do that. And time again, the Civil Service said to me, you can't do that, Minister, it's against the law. And then he stopped. The comma should have been, which is why I changed the law and returned the powers to myself.
The judges apply the law.
That's
they
right.
interpret the law. Parliament makes the law.
Yes.
And thus it is up. If we want to change things, we have to change the law.
Correct.
You cannot blame judges for interpreting law that is not fit for purpose.
Yes.
It is up to the politicians to change the law. If a reform government comes in, this is the situation we've got. We have to change the law to allow the judges to do what the country wants.
What about, and maybe you're going to say to me, Andre, you're talking garbage, and you've done that before many times, but I get the impression, and maybe I'm wrong, that there is now a group of activist lawyers, US style, who believe that the Inns of Court should be the Parliament of the United Kingdom.
Yes,
is that an unfair comment?
No, I think that is reasonable. I think the lawfare thing, the Good Law Project and things, absolutely, that exists. But the judges themselves, there may be lefty judges, there are lefty judges. However, they interpret the law as it stands. It is not their fault that the law is like that. It is the politicians' fault that the law is like that.
I'll tell you something else that somebody said to me, that it was absolutely vital that Reform UK return the powers of the Lord Chancellor. And one of the powers of the Lord Chancellor to appoint the judiciary. My mate said to me, how you make the judiciary truly independent, and guarantee their independence is this. He said, these people think about 30 years, 40, 50-year careers. So they go to Oxford to study law, and they're thinking about becoming a Supreme Court judge or a law lord in 35 years' time, or whatever it is. Now, At the moment, with the Judicial Appointments Committee, we know what the committee's going to be like. It's going to be a bit Keir Starmery, it's going to be a bit wet, whatever. If you are appointed by the Lord Chancellor, who is a member of the government, who is a government minister appointed by the Prime Minister, you cannot play to any gallery, because you know that to be a law lord, you're going to be appointed by the Lord Chancellor. You just don't know which political party that guy's going to be
and
from.
You've got a 30-year career, you don't know what you're going to do on the way there.
Exactly that. So if you have to predict, I will be a political appointment in I will be appointed by a political appointment in 30 years' time, you have to be non-political throughout your career, because otherwise you're sunk. You're going to get the wrong person.
As you rise, that is, I think, true. I think that the introduction of the Supreme Court was a disaster for this country. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the machinations that need to be created. I don't know the legal structure that needs to be done to unpick that disaster, but it is a disaster. Sorry.
Well, the problem, of course, with the Supreme Court is that in Britain, Parliament is supposed to be supreme, and therefore it's just the law lords were the House of Lords asserting the power of Parliament over the government.
But when the Supreme Court was created, it wasn't even supreme, because it was always a junior court to the European Court.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
It's a misnomer in itself. But now they are, because we're no longer.
The great thing about the House of Lords, for those people who don't really understand the judicial process, is if the government does stuff that Parliament doesn't like, it's law lords, judges in the House of Lords who rule against them. That's the important bit.
It is, and the whole
asserting the power of Parliament.
Judicial review has become a counter to democracy is an issue.
Yes.
Again, I'm not a legal expert, and it would be I would be ill-spoken to try and tell you how it works. But the entire process of judicial review has now become how can a government do anything when, as soon as it does something, with the backing of the electorate?
Yes.
And let's be honest. Remember, this government was elected.
Yes.
It has the right to pass legislation, no matter how much I dislike it.
Every government decision ends up in court.
And this is absurd.
Yes.
Because, in fact, in law, in our terms, in our constitutional terms, the people are sovereign through Parliament.
Yes.
Not through the courts.
No, absolutely right.
And there is something wrong with that, and that is part of the technical... Basically, as you were saying earlier, the Blairite tendency to say, let's
make it depoliticise.
Basically, we constitutionalise everything.
Yes.
So it goes outside the remit of the electorate, and all the quangos and all the semi-judicial, semi-legal bodies, the para-governmental bodies that exist out there, which are removed from ministers. Yeah. Ministers are no longer responsible for their own brief because there's all these quangos doing it for them. That all has to be brought back in-house so that Parliament is sovereign, because Parliament's sovereignty is merely the expression of the will of the people. OK,
well, I've got to say, Gawain, thank you for coming on. I genuinely, I mean, Gawain knows that I voted for him, but I genuinely hope that he wins. And people are saying that you should be on, be on with me every night. Martin Hove is keen. Well, look, I think, honestly, we want to give a voice to people who you can trust and you can believe in. And I think Gawain Tyler is one of those. Pete Barnes is coming up in a couple of moments. He's not always as popular, but nonetheless,
Welcome to Talk. This is where we absolutely speak common sense and reflect the views of people around the United Kingdom. The very thing that's killing children, his words, he's not banning. As long as you pay £12.50. Sick note, Britain is thriving. These things can kill. You haven't got to be a dog expert to work that out. Every afternoon here on Talk, you don't want to be going anywhere else. It's as simple, straightforward as that.
This is the press preview with Andre Walker and Pete Barnes. If you are listening on Friday morning, the excellent Mike Graham Breakfast Show is coming up just in a couple of moments. Well, in about 53 minutes, but please do hang around for that. It's going to be an absolutely action-packed show. It always is, but it's going to be a particularly good one. OK, so we've got Pete Barnes for the press preview. And Pete, look, before we start, I have to say, you were proved right.
Oh, there's a shock.
When people said there could be nothing worse than the Conservative immigration performance, then Labour came along. Yeah. So, OK, what are these numbers on the front page of The Independent? I mean, look, I'll go through some of them. Yeah. 111,000 people have claimed asylum, 32,000 people in hotels, 25% deportations, rise in deportations. That's probably not bad. There's been a reduction in the cost of asylum under Labour, but fundamentally, you know, we can footle around the edges, but immigration, small boats are out of control.
Yes.
Remain out of control.
Yeah, they remain out of control. But I think this is the government's problem: is that actually on the numbers, they're trending very well. They're actually getting the numbers down. The problem they've got is an optics one, because you can see the boats, and it's also the knock-on effect of the migrant crisis. So you have the hotels, you have the sexual crimes rates, you have lots of other factors that have gone into the migration crisis that have become an even bigger part of it than just people coming in and out of the country illegally. This is the big problem, is that this has spiraled into a bigger issue that is so far beyond just an immigration one, that it's a crime one, it's a social cohesion one, it's so many different factors. It's mainly an economic one. My God, the amount of money that we're continuing to spend is through the roof, and it's one of the reasons our inflation rate is
What about this idea? What about this central idea? I was reading about Denmark the other day. Now, look, I know that you look at stuff that goes on internationally, but might not have the granular detail. Denmark, this idea of non-Western zones, where they basically say, look, there are now so many people from abroad who live in this particular area, we're A, not going to allow any more people to move in, and B, we're going to start relocating people. But every ward in Denmark has to be majority Danish speaking, with a majority of Danish Christians in it. Now, we've historically avoided doing that, but as Gawain Towler said earlier in the show, when you're talking about people coming from the Caribbean, when you're talking about people originally going to Wigan or Leigh from Pakistan or Bangladesh, they were coming to work. When you're talking about people who are just benefit migrants, I think you have to think about doing something like that. It doesn't make you a racist or a bad person.
No, I completely agree. It's one of the few areas me and Gawain actually agree on. It is this kind of idea that people that came to this country back in the day obviously came to work. There was a lot of industrial and economic shift, but the problem is we've got to bring the country with us, and on this argument. And unfortunately, the right, on ourselves included, have not been very good at being able to convince people that this is the right thing to do. The crafting of that message hasn't really caught the middle of Middle England just yet. The interesting thing is, when we look at the migration hotels issue, is that has started to affect lower middle class people. So therefore, the narrative has shifted. The Overton window has moved, the most overused phrase ever, and now we're able to actually have that conversation, and people are starting to listen to us. With that stuff, it is still too easy just to scream racist and people will shut it down and you won't have it. It's all about reframing these issues so that you can actually bring people with you. I go back to Rishi Sunak's speech he did about net zero. It's the best thing he ever did as Prime Minister. He made
that's not a high bar.
It's like one of 9 things at best on a good day, but it's that point of you can have all the best ideas, but if you don't bring the country with you, if you don't bring people with you, it is completely irrelevant. So you've got to start crafting the narrative. You've got to start winning the PR battle. And finally, the right has got in the room of this understanding, and it's actually starting to win. And it's why we're starting to see shifts in the migration crisis, because we're reframing it. We're not just saying we don't like foreigners. We're now arguing it around economics. We're arguing it around crime. We're arguing it around the impact on communities. You know, these things are so powerful, because if you don't bring certain voter groups with you, it all falls flat, unfortunately. So don't get me wrong, I don't disagree with what Denmark wants to do, but the Denmark situation, from what I understand, is slightly different, because the sheer number dwarfs ours. Like, they have just been ransacked. If you look at Germany, for example, it's holding on to being a country by the skin of its teeth, really. I think it was Ayaan Hirsi Ali said that the fall of Germany was an inevitability, and so she said Britain was basically next. You know, this woman has been on the front lines for a long time.
We're sat there, we as a country, not you and me, but we as a country are sat there saying, Britain is for everyone. It doesn't matter whether you speak English or Urdu. It doesn't matter whether you're a Christian or a Muslim. It doesn't matter whether you engage locally. It doesn't matter whether you, you have a culture being at the WI and all this sort of thing. I was at my nephew's football tournament in Warrington. Now, Warrington has a non-white population, or non-white's the easiest way I can say of being from a migrant background. So 11% of the population of Warrington are non-white. At this football tournament, there was one non-white child. Now, you can say that football tournament was racist all day. I suspect that's not true. I think what's happened is we've placed no value whatsoever on people being part of Britain. You're well into your rugby, you're from Oral, your dad's secretary of Oral Rugby Club or whatever it is. But once again, the rugby tradition of Wigan, how engaged is the Pakistani community in that?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. It's this problem of siloisation, is that, you know, that community could do that community could do that, and all the rest of it. There is no integration. It's the lack of complete integration. There's no integration policy in this country, because that is the point of multiculturalism, is that you don't...
Explain that again, because you've said this loads of times, but I agree with it completely.
Basically, the people who say multiculturalism hasn't worked don't understand multiculturalism. The point of it is the rejection of the native culture. So basically, you can be from wherever you like in the world, and you can make your home that country. You don't make it British. There is no need, no requirement, no legal precedent or anything for you to integrate at all. That is multiculturalism. So by definition, it's worked perfectly. The consequences of it have been catastrophic.
So you're saying the phrase should be multiculturalism should not have happened.
Basically,
that's it. But also, you draw a delineation between multiculturalism and immigration. So, and I think I do as well. I mean, I always say that my grandmother, I talk about my Irish grandmother, though she was from Belfast, so obviously that is the United Kingdom. But when I talk about my Greek grandmother, you know, she refused to teach my dad a word of Greek. He's only Greek Orthodox because he was born in Athens. He was brought up Church of England, and as far as she was concerned, they were completely British. Now, I think losing any of your cultural background may be a bit over the top, but this woman said, come to Britain, you're bloody British. Whereas that attitude now is, well, let's create an Urdu-speaking community.
It's because the idea that...
That's the Balkans, not Britain.
Yes, so this is the idea that the reason people have lost their cultural identity from another country is because it has been quashed, it has been taken away from them. That somehow the white people have, like, colonised you again. That narrative has started to seep back into the politics, so therefore that the need to speak Urdu, the need to do more cultural things, has become more prevalent than it used to be. And you know, because of the lack of integration policies and all the rest of it, with that kind of has spiralled yet again out of control.
But isn't it vital? And I would say it is vital to say, I think Pakistan's rubbish, therefore I moved to England. I think it's odd to say, I think Pakistan is marvellous, that's why I moved to Burnley, right? I think that is a stupid thing to do. And when I talk about my Greek relatives, my Greek great-uncle believed Greece was a great place to live, and therefore he lived in it. My grandmother thought it was a dump, and therefore she left. And I just think that, for me, if you move to Britain, pining to be in Algeria. There's an obvious solution. The flight to Algeria takes about 4 hours.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But the reason for this is actually because it's what we call the enemy within. We have been able to kind of demonstrably take ourselves down. We've somehow thought that we're the bad guy when we're the country that have human rights, we're the country that have freedom and democracy and liberty and all these things, that somehow we're the bad guys in every situation. With that kind of creeping, it's part of the woke agenda, as we always say, but it's that kind of creeping infection into all our institutions. It's why nobody trusts each other anymore, is because everything has been ripped apart and has been deliberately made to push an agenda that is not about integration.
But if I turn round to the Dutch and say it is unacceptable for a group of people from the Netherlands to arrive in South Africa with their own language and culture, boot black people off their land and create an insular community, why can't I say that about Pakistanis in Burnley?
Well, you can. We should. But however, again, it is self-censorship. It's this narrative that we are we have to do some kind of contrition. That's what it seems to me, that somehow we have to be punished. This is our punishment for merely existing and being kind of responsible for things that we weren't even alive for.
But equally, I mean, if you were to turn around, and I hear people say this all the time, and say, well, we ruined their country. But then, surely you wouldn't say, well, and I have heard people say this, well, colonialism was a mistake, therefore what we should do is do it the other way around to try and even things up. Well, hang on a second. If it was a mistake in Pakistan, why is it a good idea in Britain? Or are we saying, look, given that India is perceived to have been damaged by the empire, it's vital we damage the United Kingdom in a similar way?
Yeah, I would argue that pretty much everywhere the British went is more than likely a better country now than most others.
I believe that
if
as well,
you think about it. And also, if they don't like the benefits of colonialism, we'll have the money back that we invested in those countries, by all means. And we take cheque or credit card.
Absolutely.
And I think this is a big point, that we have to start fighting back against these narratives. That people just seem to say, oh, well, colonialism bad. Well, yes, there were aspects of it were bad, but also there were aspects of it that were pretty good. You know, the kind of expansion of the English legal system, for example, is one of the greatest gifts we've ever given to the world. You know, there's a reason that where you go on holidays where the British used to be.
There's that geezer, what's his name? Constantine Chrynis, or whatever his name is. You know, that's part...
Trigonometry.
Constantine Chrysin. From the Trigonometry YouTube channel. And I watched a clip of him. I don't know when it was from, but obviously he's a Russian Jew who's come to the United Kingdom. And he simply said on Question Time, Britain, we do it down, it's not perfect, but it is the least racist, democratic, and the audience almost attacked him.
Yeah,
and he was saying, I've lived in other countries, no, Britain is all right. And it was amazing, actually. But I suppose, and you're the wrong person to ask, Pete, but are we therefore saying that Britain is awful, and if only we were more like Somalia, it would be better? That's the argument for bringing Somalians here. Is that what we're saying?
No, I actually think that the people who advocate this kind of stuff actually believe that there is no difference between people in Somalia and people in the United Kingdom. They believe in this kind of it's the universal human rights idea that everybody is essentially the same. What they're doing is denying cultural differences, religious differences, economic and nationalist differences that basically make each group of nations different. You know, so there's a reason we have shared similarity with France. There's still big differences between us and the French.
But here's the other thing. Here's the other thing that strikes me. If everybody was completely autonomous, if culture, family, heritage made absolutely no difference, then why is it that when Sikh people move to the UK, they all move to Southall? I mean, they could move, they could live anywhere.
I think it's probably that's just more where there is their culture, their people. And we would do the same. I think when you go to certain bits of Australia, like there are bits that's where all the Brits live.
Yeah,
we talk about Benidorm, for example. It's Malta, it's a prime example. It's where all the Brits are.
I've never been. I should say it's a nightclub before I say anything else. But I've never been to church, which is is it called the Wandsworth Grand opposite Clapham Junction station? But there's a big tradition amongst people from the former white colonies, if you want to call them that, Australia, South Africa. Well, I suppose you can't call South Africa white colony, but you know what I mean. Amongst people who family left Britain, they go to this nightclub on a Sunday that opens at something like 1 in the afternoon, and they all dress up in their gear and whatever. whatever.
Yeah, it's something bingo. I think.
But if you've decided I'm moving to Britain from Australia, it sounds odd on the face of it to hang around with Australians, but actually we are herd creatures.
Oh, without
and
a
we
doubt.
want to hang around with our own kind.
Yeah, particularly when you're moving to a different country, you want to be around people that don't forget about the family connection within a lot of Muslim nations is a lot stronger than it is in ours.
Oh yes,
I think religion plays a major aspect in the Protestant nature of this country. The fact that we move around so much more than Catholic nations or Muslim nations do.
Yes,
and I think that plays a big factor. But I just think it's common sense, really, that if I was moving to a different country, I would probably say, well, I'll start off at where most of the people I know are, the neighbour who lived down the streets 2 years ago, he moved there. I'll go there as well. I think that would make more sense.
But it's thinking and taking it further. Even you and I have done this. The fact that we were both members of the Conservative Party in the Wigan Borough is really of no interest to the audience whatsoever. And yet we've talked about it so many times simply because, I mean, I did this with Kay Burley.
It's a cultural
exactly right.
Share.
I appeared on Kay Burley's show on Sky, and the first thing she did during the break was ask me which bit of the Northwest I was from. And when I said I was from Loughton, she said, oh, I was there for the Goulburn pit disaster and all this. Now, when you think about it, you think, well, who cares about all that? But to get back to the original point, of course these enclaves are going to exist because people, if you're coming over from Pakistan, you'll want to hang around with Pakistanis, and that just disproves this whole multicultural thing.
What I think you can have the enclaves, but they can't become ghettos. That's the difference. So you can have areas that are like predominantly one certain thing, but what you've not got to allow to happen, is them becoming kind of walled off. That is only that kind of person that lives there. That their cultures become the norm there, and that is what's happened, particularly here in London, is happening throughout the UK. So we use where is it? Like Whitechapel, for example, is a big area like that, and I think there's a couple of others. Why is every area of London just gone out of my head as one area? But you know,
well, if you think, I mean, I think of the East End now as the Bengalis.
Yes, that kind of.
I mean, funnily enough,
isn't the one where the tube station is written in
whatever
a different language, and that kind of thing can't happen. You've got to stick to to the British culture, to the British tradition. You can have all the things you like culturally within your area, fine, but there still has to be a rooted in the home nation, and that is why multiculturalism
I think also I'm fine with things like the little Chinatowns and probably the Curry Mile in Manchester, and probably what is it in the East End, the Whitechapel type area, Brick Lane was what I was thinking. I don't have a particular problem with that, but I think it's when areas are very specifically. And I'll tell you what, when we come back, I do want to talk a little bit about this story that's come up today about HMOs and about this perception, probably a true perception, that ordinary British families have been thrown out on the street in favour of migrants to the UK. More next. Yes, it's the press preview with Andre Walker and Pete Barnes. If you're watching on Friday morning, just want to remind you to stay tuned. In about 40 minutes' time, we've got Mike Graham on. The breakfast show just gets bigger and bigger all the time. And, it's not just that we want your support. It's a great show. It's absolutely worth watching. We were talking, obviously, about these front pages, and we're only on the first one, which is The Independent. But if I go to Metro, once again, it's Asylum record, Asylum numbers. Pete, the hotels. So we have now seen the closure of hotels. I find this a ludicrous thing from the Labour government, and I'll tell you why. Because it's a willful misunderstanding. We need fewer asylum hotels. They don't mean move them elsewhere. They mean they shouldn't be in the country. I worry a great deal about issuing eviction notices to British families in order to put people in. That's when, and I wouldn't encourage this at all, that's when things start to get nasty.
Yes. My bigger question is, and everyone always brings this up about, they're just going to put them in social housing. What social housing?
Correct.
This is also a bigger problem that we are not talking about, is we are not building anything. You know, I think Sadiq Khan here in London is miles behind his targets, and the government overall is never hitting 1.5 million homes by the end of the parliamentary term. That's never going to happen. You know, we can talk about the HMOs things till we're blue in the face, but there is...
HMOs, we shouldn't do that. It's house of multiple occupancy. Sorry, I should apologise. So what houses of multiple occupancy used to be is students where they'd rent them out by the room. Also, quite a lot of Indian restaurants will offer as a package to their staff to live upstairs. But large numbers of people renting one room in a house, it's not that common across the country.
Not really, but in big cities, say here in London, it's pretty common. I actually think a big problem of people talk about HMOs is actually a generational thing. Is that most people have been to university, so are used to sharing with other people.
Yes.
I think an older generation hasn't been through that, so the idea of sharing with 6 people in a house seems that you've never met seems an absolutely radical idea, but actually for younger people, that's pretty much what you do, particularly when you first move to a big city or you first go to university. But from the government's perspective, you're right, it is willful ignorance, and it is playing with numbers and playing with words.
I mean, it's like when they said we want to reduce the number of small boats, we'll fly them in instead.
Yes,
that's not what people meant.
No, it's
now,
not.
I do accept people were worried about people on the channel, because I mean, if you've been on one of those ferries on a blustery day, to be on.
I've got pretty decent sea legs, and even I'm like clinging on.
But here's something that's on my YouTube channel that I just wanted to talk to you about. I've come across, admittedly, only one example of this, of a housing association that's been taken over by people of Pakistani descent who are now deliberately moving people out, not for asylum seekers, but for migrants. So they're saying, right, come over from Pakistan and we will find you accommodation. I worry about this, and I'll tell you why. So you can go to my YouTube channel, Andre JP Walker, if you want to watch the video. And Pete hasn't seen it, therefore it would be wrong to broadside you with it. But I worry when 70% of housing goes to social housing goes to people who weren't born in Britain. Can we trust the housing associations, or is there a racist policy taking place? Because they decide who goes in officially based on criteria. But it's amazing how month after month, year after year, it's only recent migrants that get accommodated.
Yeah, I have to admit that does smell fishy, and I do think it needs stronger oversight. It needs actual... This is the problem with these kind of unofficial bodies and that kind of stuff, is it's very loose with the wording and what their remit is, and, you know, this kind of... It's a private thing, they can do what they like, but how are they treating people? But this goes back to a big problem we have with the multiculturalism problem, is we didn't do what David Starkey called cutting the apron strings. So we still have that link back to your home country, and there is a kind of funnel and a tunnel to the UK and a way of getting yourself into the United Kingdom.
So what David Starkey says that there are 2 examples of this: modern immigration and the British royal family. The British royal family for years used to always marry Germans. Therefore, every generation that got more British suddenly had a German mother, effectively, who couldn't speak the lingo and whatever, and that kept them German for a much more significant amount of time than actually they should have, because their second or third cousin happened to be from Hanover. And he says now that what is happening is, because of the marriage situation, we are in every generation importing people from Pakistan and Bangladesh and more, and keeping that community foreign.
Yeah, and also one of the big problems, we're then importing that politics, their values into the United Kingdom. That's why you ended up with basic race riots in Leicester, you know, which had nothing to do with the white domestic indigenous population.
Had nothing to do with Leicester.
Nothing to do with Leicester. It just happened to do with the communities that were there, and because we have not severed the ties, so, you know, we haven't made people feel British. This is a big problem that my new concern is that as we make it harder to become a citizen, to come here, we can't keep having people jump through hoops, because that keeps people kind of, well, I'm not really part of it.
Yes.
And I think if you don't have that, do you see my point?
Paradox.
There's a paradox there. We've got to make it British, to a degree, but you can't have everybody like performing like seals all the time at SeaWorld. It doesn't work like that, and I think that will create more animosity. But
well, the reality. So I think my view, and I imagine you're on the same page, is that actually there is an ability to assimilate people.
Yes.
That's plainly true, because actually when we're talking about foreign culture and whatever, how many people know fish and chips is Jewish, right? Come from somewhere like Latvia or whatever, and people don't think of it like that anymore. And so I think there are things that can become. They always use that word quintessentially, don't they? There are some things that become quintessentially British by integration over time. But it's just the sheer numbers of people.
It is, and it's the short amount of time to which they've come. That's always been my thing.
Society has changed.
Society has changed so radically that you've kind of we've got cultural whiplash, as I've been calling it. Is that kind of wait, how did this change so quickly? You know, and it's a very visual thing as well. You know, the high streets are changing. Your local community, or even your street has changed significantly in 14, 15 years.
I also, this is an awful thing to say, and it's got nothing to do with the colour of people's skin, even though on the face of it, it sounds like that's what I'm talking about. I walk around London and see school trips where there's one white child in the class, and you think, my goodness me, I mean, okay, look, I mean, it's odd for us because we grew up in an area that was incredibly white, right? And Bolton was next door, and that was much more mixed. But it's always a surprise to me to see either 1 or 0 white, you know, 60 kids, and you think, my God, there's just no. Okay, I hate this phrase, Indigenous British people.
I don't like that phrase either.
But I haven't got a better way of saying it.
No, I agree, and I think this is actually where we really should target the integration aspect of the kind of the policy area, because it is making kids speak English. It is doing away, I believe, with faith schools overall. I think we need to have a uniformed education system on a kind of cultural level, because what's happening is kids are speaking English in school, then they're going home and speaking Urdu for the rest of the day.
Yes.
You know, when we've got to kind of ingrain people into speaking the language, because once you speak the language, you can communicate with everybody else outside of your community.
I've got to say, somebody's got in touch with me and said that they believe that all refugees should be housed at Brunel University's campus in Uxbridge because the people there were so keen on refugees they should give up their own student accommodation.
Do you know, interestingly, I once stayed at that student accommodation, and I would not wish it on my worst enemy.
When I was on the Young Conservative National Executive doing the Conservative student thing, I stayed in some absolute rum dumps.
I look back at it now and I'm like, why? Why did I do any of that?
The worst one.
I didn't think it was a good idea.
The worst one was when I was in the Slovenian debating competition, because I am, as you know, the former Slovenian debating champion. Right. So just to explain to everybody, universities host the competitions for other universities. So the Slovenian National Championship didn't have any Slovenians in it. But anyway, I stayed in this student accommodation because Slovenia is so small. Loads of kids go to boarding school. There's like thousands of probably not thousands, but there's loads of them. So I had this bed, and it was about half the size it needed to be. And then when they got the towel for me, it was like a face towel. And I thought, what am I going to do with this? Wash myself or do a stripper act?
But just really interestingly, when people say they should be housed here, what we're actually talking about here is the fairness aspect. And I think that is going to be the issue at the next general election. Why is one group getting everything and the other group is not only paying for it, they're getting nothing and being told to be quiet about it? That element is in everything.
But it's also I think it's all concentric circles. Starkey had to go at me for this, for being the Christian view of the world. But the concentric circles are that you know, as an example, if you were driving down the street and you could either and there was some sort of accident situation, you could either run me over or your dad, you'd run me over. Right. Similarly, you know, just instinctively, if it was me stood next to somebody from Afghanistan, you'd probably run over the person. And there's loads of examples of that where you're more bothered about what happens to your next door neighbour than someone 300 miles away. And you're more bothered about it's like when we're much more bothered about Madeleine McCann than we are of the, say, 1,000 Nigerian girls that were kidnapped last month. And that's simply because I'm just more bothered about Britain than Nigeria. Right? But there just doesn't seem to be an acceptance of that in UK policy, that housing the person next door to you is more important than housing somebody from Somalia to me.
Yeah, that's interesting, because sometimes I think it's the complete reversal of that sometimes we seem to care about.
Yes.
We don't. Yeah, I don't. It's interesting because the left, I would say, argue more on an international basis than they do domestically, as the right focus domestically and rather ignore the international stuff.
Well, I think
to a degree anyway.
I think they don't do it deliberately. I think that what they do is they want to offer refugee status to all these people, and don't think about the fact they've got nowhere to put them.
And I think that is the thing. It's the do-gooder syndrome, isn't it?
Do-gooders. When you see them, and there's, it's pretty old hat to walk around going, would you house a refugee? There's a great tendency for these people to have not really thought about that. And then they come up with this catch-all, which is, get the rich to pay for it.
Oh, yes.
And you think, well, I was thinking politics the other guy is you.
Yeah.
When you go, we'll get the rich to do it. You're the rich.
Yes, exactly. What is, if you earn the minimum wage in this country, you're part of the top 3% globally. So
is that right?
So what do you mean by rich?
Yeah.
that is the thing you've always got to ask when people talk about rich.
So almost everybody in Britain is the 1%.
Pretty much, yeah. You know,
that's brilliant.
it is actually hilarious. When we talk about poverty, when we talk about this stuff, it is relative poverty.
Right.
You know, that word does a lot of work.
I want to just say to you, Barnes has had that stolen by me today. Let's go on to the Telegraph. And this whole thing about Gaza, which is on the front page just below Queen Camilla. Look, I worry about this because I don't always think the Israeli government does the right thing, but I do think when you are in a situation whereby Hamas are stealing aid and enriching themselves and taking money overseas, it's got to be galling for Israel to allow that to continue. So basically, Hamas sits there and says, if you don't give us food, Gaza will starve. And that is correct. But when the food comes to Gaza, we are going to sell it to the population and spirit the money away to Swiss bank accounts. That's incredibly frustrating.
I've come to the conclusion on this that I'm just on Netanyahu's side. I don't care what the UN say. I don't care what any international body has to say about this issue at all anymore. After the UNRWA situation, the United Nations has no right to get involved in this issue ever again. They have shown to be corrupt.
And the Haiti Sex for Food programme?
All of them. All of them. Every international body I now look at, mainly because of what's come out of the Gaza situation, with absolute contempt, because they are more of a hindrance than a help.
And just to explain to the public, so UNRWA, the UN Special Agency for Palestine, effectively, basically a division of Hamas.
Yes.
That's probably slightly unfair. It's very closely linked to Hamas. The reason it exists, and this is a bit that people don't realise, and many aid workers will not join its ranks because of its links to terrorism. And that is something funded by the UK taxpayer.
Yeah, and what annoys me more is when this is brought up, the number of people say, oh, it's just a few. It's not. Thousands of people who work for UNRWA were implicated in assisting a genocidal terrorist organisation. Now they're going to start giving me a lecture on what's right and what's wrong. I don't think so. I am sick to death of the hypocrisy and the kind of lack of self-awareness these organisations have, because they just have such tunnel focus.
But the UN don't care, do they?
They don't care, because let's not forget the United Nations was basically set up so all the little nations can have an argument with each other and they can all hate on Israel. That is the reason it's there.
Yeah.
You know,
the big problem is with the UN, and this is where I think in politics, quite often people are not stupid, but there are unintended consequences. So the idea of bringing the whole world together to talk about things means the vast majority of resolutions, resolutions can only go through if there is a majority, and the majority of countries are crazed dictatorships.
Exactly. You know, what with Saudi Arabia, we're head of the Human Rights Committee. It's just nonsense. But what's interesting, when you look at this... the thing that's just come out with Netanyahu saying about hostages and entering a ceasefire negotiation, this was Hamas on Monday said they were going to follow the Qatari plan and all the rest of it. Netanyahu said, no, it's not just half of the hostages we want all of them, because the thing that people completely forget, there are still people held hostage by this organisation from October 7th. You know, and
what's it been? 3 years?
Yeah,
2 years?
2 years.
Yeah,
it's crazy to me. But also, Netanyahu is very serious about this attack on the North Gaza cities. You know, he is very serious about this. And whilst a lot of people are very unhappy with him, he doesn't care anymore. This is the thing that really gets me about Israel recently, is they've just said, you can say what you like about us now. We're not going to try to justify anything to you, because it's very clear that you're driven by anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And I think that has become their kind of single aim now, is we don't care about being your villain. We don't care about playing nice.
The other point that Gawain Towler made earlier is this, that there is a particular thing with Islam. Sorry, there's a particular thing with many Muslims. There's nothing about this in the Quran, right? But that if Muslims have ever lived in an area, it is Islamic land forever. Yeah. And when we talk about the settlers, I went to one of the settlements in the West Bank when I first visited Israel in about 25 years ago, something like that. And actually, it was just like a Barratt housing estate. Basically, what had happened was there was more Israelis than there were properties, and basically there was a big load of empty land, and they basically just built new developments. And it is like going round. Many of you will have seen these new Barratt developments where it was literally like doing that. Yeah,
because it's a functioning liberal democracy when everything else around it is a 7th century hellhole. And it is not bad to say that, because there's the reason that Egypt closed its borders the moment the 7th of October happened. The moment that happened, Egypt, a Muslim nation, shut its gates. There is a reason for that.
I will say one thing that I've got to be strongly critical of Israel over. Strongly critical. Israeli food is rubbish. It really is. Had it not been...
It's in the middle of a desert. They're rather limited.
Had it not been for Ukrainian for Ukrainian pickled cabbage dumplings, I would say that Israeli food was the worst.
I'm not going to lie. Even that sounds a bit of a test.
The Ukrainian pickled cabbage dumplings, I mean, honestly, is the worst thing I've ever tried. Mind you, Samara Gill took me for what was it? Oh God, let me get this right. It's shredded meat and jelly, Russian style. I'll tell you what, that was another firmly to avoid.
Where are you going for these
honestly, I'll tell you what. No.
We're in London Bridge, a very nice, there's lots of restaurants to choose from. Why on earth are we going
I'll tell you that. But before we go and we continue with the press preview, I will say actually the worst dish I've ever seen, and I didn't eat it, but my mate ordered a sausage dish in Colombia where they were still using the pig's intestine to make the sides of the sausage or the casing of the... That is filth. I mean, that is something that we stopped doing in Britain in about 1820 or something.
And if we stopped doing it...
Absolutely. I will say to you that a sausage using actual pig's intestine is something very firmly to avoid this morning. See you in a bit.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is the press preview with Andre Walker and Pete Barnes. We've got Mike Graham coming up just in a couple of minutes. And I think we're going to take a caller who is George from Portsmouth. George, you are through. So Andre and Pete. There we go.
Good evening.
Pete is Reet, by the way. He's from Wigan. Pete is Reet.
Good evening, guys. How are you?
Yeah, great.
Good. I just wanted to call, obviously, and speak to you in relation to the HMOs and the Section 21s of people being evicted from their properties.
I'm just going to do everyone a favour. Let's call them houses of multiple occupancy, simply because some people won't know what HMOs are. But please continue.
Absolutely. I don't know, obviously, if you know, but I'm a councillor down in Portsmouth, City Council for Reform, and we were one of the ones that broke the story last week. So I can obviously give you a bit of information about this. And
go for it.
And so it come to light a couple of months ago when we had a few residents contact us and let us know that they believed that migrants were kind of living next door to them in HMOs, and we said that's really unlikely. It's not kind of possible. Then we had a selection of residents contact us and say we're being evicted using Section 21 to make way for migrants, and we went to the council officers and said, look, this is what we're being told, and the council officer said, no, we don't have any HMOs being used in Portsmouth for this reason. The Home Office have not told us about this. It's not happening. And then last Monday now, we received a communication from a letting agent that basically provided us with a contract to prove that HMOs were being used for this purpose.
And just to be clear, George, Councillor George, just to be clear, let me just understand. So it's not Portsmouth City Council that own or operate the HMOs. They're privately owned and operated, and it's the Home Office that have done this. And do we trust Portsmouth City Council officers? Do we believe that they were not told about this?
I'd be shocked if they were. I mean, the officer in particular in question is a real credible officer.
It's quite. I have to say to you, in a matter like this, it's quite rare for a council officer to lie to a councillor. So I'd be inclined to believe the City Council.
Yeah. It would be a bit silly if they did, because obviously we could just do an FOI request and find out.
Sure.
But there's, it would be foolish of them to do so. But at the end of the day, the council, I don't know if you saw in the Sunday Times, that the council actually have now issued a formal complaint with the Home Office. The Home Office haven't updated Portsmouth City Council since 2023.
Are they obliged to do that?
No.
No.
Legally, no. But the Tory government, when they were in power, they did update the council regularly, and that communication basically stopped in December 2024. So, whilst the Tories were in power, granted, but it hasn't reissued since then. And the most annoying thing is we found out tonight, literally just an hour ago, that Portsmouth City Council now have more asylum seekers in our city than every other county council or city council or unitary council in the whole of Hampshire combined.
Yes.
So we're getting a real big issue down in Portsmouth.
Well, we had a major problem in the northwest of England. I appreciate it's not the same, but we had a major problem where a lot of places like Morecambe and Blackpool, a lot of seaside towns, were filled up with people who had been basically thrown out of their council accommodation for being druggies and whatever. And what you tended to find was when you have these destitute people in very large numbers, it just crushes the economy of an area just by osmosis, Pete.
Yeah, 100%. It's called Blackpool.
Yeah,
it's exactly what happened. But no, in all seriousness, it's interesting because wasn't there a story earlier today that the government finally released how many local authorities and local areas actually have migrant hotels? It's like 311, and interestingly, majority are in Labour areas, which I was very surprised at. But though I am, and then I'm not.
It's a money thing.
Yeah, it's a money thing. But what I do find this interesting, that we are starting to see central government just either run roughshod over local authorities, or they're not informing them, and the breakdown of local versus national government, despite them being in the same political parties and all the rest of it. National government is running roughshod right over local authorities and local councillors, who I actually think are doing the very best that they can on this issue. Even in the Labour areas, where they're not as concerned about this, they are actually, more concerned because the government isn't informing them. They're not giving them the information. That breakdown, and it's being done deliberately by the Home Office, is very concerning because it's a centralisation of power. I've never seen a government more wanting to have everything kind of centralised than any government I've lived through anyway, because everything is coming back to Whitehall. Everything is coming back to the Home Office, back to Downing Street. Downing Street, in particular, is running the show, no matter what anybody says. It is absolutely amazing to me. But
George, I mean, what are the local population saying? Because I think Pete and I are pretty convinced, sat here in the studio, that there is a great sense of unfairness here. We have people phoning in, and I'm sure you do. And look, I understand that there's an elite that live in central London and whatever, but the ordinary people that we talk to, many people can't afford the heating. And when they see people putting the heating on and leaving the windows open, many people can't afford the latest iPhone. Many people can't afford, a lot of the other things that people are being given, whether it's bikes or a chef to cook your 3 meals a day. I think the number of people with in-house chefs to cook them 3 meals a day is fairly low. Is there a sense of resentment in Portsmouth?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it really is, and I think it's just getting worse and worse. I don't know if you actually, it was on your show actually the other day. They released that Portsmouth are now offering 40% off of beach hut hire for asylum seekers in the city, and off kayaking lessons, and off local cafes and shops. And this is things that local residents also don't get access to. But you've got to remember, going back to the house of multiple occupancy, you've got to remember that the people that stereotypically live or use house of multiple occupancy, like you said just 10 minutes ago, are people that are students, young people, people with low earnings, and they are literally removing these people using Section 21, so people that haven't got much money, and basically kicking them on the streets or putting them on a social housing.
There was a piece of research recently. Now, how credible or good this research was, but they were saying that if Sadiq Khan got his way on immigration, he would have to create 50,000 homeless British people in London in order to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, and this is the kind of mentality that we're having to deal with.
But why are they so just to be clear, because Pete's given his theory, George, give me your theory about. I mean, is it just do-gooders not thinking about this, or are the people licking their lips saying, "Let's stick it to the Brits, throw them out onto the streets in favour of our people"?
Listen, there's always a method to the madness, and I personally
is there though?
Well, maybe not in this case, but I mean, what I can't fathom is that, and going back to what Pete said, and he's absolutely bang on the money. Portsmouth City Council, back about 5 years ago, passed a motion to say we want no more asylum seekers in the city. In 2023, we reconfirmed to the Home Office we don't want any more asylum seekers in the city. Penny Mordaunt, who was our MP at the time, informed Home Office, which was at that time a Conservative Home Office, we don't want any more in the city. And then finally, the Labour Party, when they took over, sent us a letter to say we're doing an asylum accommodation pilot scheme. Would you like to be on it? We said no. And then, behind closed doors, without our council knowing, they approached subcontractors who then went to landlords locally and secretly ushered people out of their houses and did not tell the council.
I have to say to you, I mean, we've always known. I had a period, as you know, where I didn't have a home down south for a little while, and I was staying in hotels in London, and there was a noticeable effect of the migrant hotels. Not that I was in a migrant hotel, clearly, but when you reduce the number of hotel rooms, obviously you put up the price. So we've always had that. But to literally throw people out onto the streets in favour of a bogus asylum seeker from Albania is morally pretty reprehensible.
Well, how can the Labour Party say that we've got a national social housing crisis while meanwhile removing residents from their house and lowering the housing stock? I mean,
I'm going to say, with respect, George, let's not forget that Angela Rayner said there was a housing crisis and then said that we didn't need to build any more houses. When it comes to housing, the Labour Party do not have a clue which way the front door is.
There's a reason they call a no-brainer Rayner.
Exactly, yeah.
Because, I mean, my lunch has a higher IQ than Angela Rayner.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
It was peanut butter.
Yeah, but no, this actually, I think... What this all boils down to yet again is what I was saying, is that the central government is running roughshod, or more importantly, is doing things and not telling anybody, and the public finding out. I've always said that that's the most important phrase. It is finding out. It's not being told, it's finding out. That means something has been kept from the public. The government has not learned this lesson, that the more you keep from the public, the angrier they are going to be when they find out. I used the Southport riots last year. I use every migrant hotel as an example. The reason there are such big protests and such a reaction is because this has been dumped on people and they are finding out, and it is the consequences that they're living in. The government has not learned its lesson.
Well, OK, George, we're going to cut you off, but what I was going to say to you is the gallery has said to me, you've got to come in one night and do our paper review with us. Are you up for it?
Sure. Absolutely.
Great. All right, we're going to get your details properly because obviously when you phone in, we don't write down everyone's details. OK, thank you so much, George. We're going to go to a break, but I'm going to be back with Pete Barnes. OK, this is the press preview with Andre Walker and Pete Barnes. Pete, what have you found on the front page?
Well, it's got to be the front page of The Sun, isn't it? Mum's home, Lucy Connolly, after, 300 and some... I can't remember how many days she was in there. 377 days.
It didn't matter.
Yes.
I mean, if you didn't know the number, you shouldn't have raised it.
No, it was in my head, and then I don't know what it is today. It's just... numbers just aren't staying in my head today, but I have to admit, I am concerned about the reaction to this, and it's the same with the migrant hotels. This is not a victory for anybody.
No.
This is we still have two-tier justice. She still went to prison. We have not seen any major policy shift or movement on this from the government. They still maintain that this was the right thing to do.
There's two ways of looking at this. There's two ways of looking at this. So we know that the police and the Crown Prosecution Service are crazed extremists when it comes to this issue. And I know that police officers watch this and listen to this show. I think crazed extremists is a reasonable thing, having read the College of Policing view on things like non-crime hate incidents. There is a major issue with this story, which is with Ricky Jones, or whatever his name is, the Labour councillor. He pleaded not guilty, and the court basically just dismissed the police and the CPS as talking garbage. They may well have done that in the Lucy Connolly case. Her mistake was she pleaded guilty.
Yes. So comparing those two things is like comparing apples and a Ford Focus. They are similar, but you're not talking about the same thing.
An apple and a Ford Focus are not similar.
No, but that's my point, is that these are really different things.
They're so different.
Yes, and I think too many people are lumping everything together in a very lazy way to try and make an argument that we don't need to stress. I've made this point on the weekend when the Ricky Jones decision was out, because we have to stop overplaying the card. We already have enough examples of two-tier justice. We have real-world things that we could actually hold the government to account on. We don't have to keep conflating to make the point.
But if you look at this, I'll tell you what this is similar to. What it reminds me of. It reminds me of the Alison Saunders, when she was Director of Public Prosecutions, expansion of the number of... given that this is the morning, why don't I say RAPE prosecutions? Just in case there are kids, they'd have to be up very early, but those number of prosecutions, she expanded the number of prosecutions because she said that there weren't enough going to court. What it meant was more and more people who'd done nothing wrong got dragged into it. Yes. But what didn't happen was, whilst the police went along with that, the CPS went along with it, the juries really didn't, and just threw all these cases out. Now, we know it was unpleasant for the people who went to court, but it sounds to me like the juries are still sensible, and the police and the Crown Prosecution Service can bring cases like this all day, but all they are doing is wasting the court's time, because the court's just going to boot them all out.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's one of the reasons that we should not be so gung-ho to get rid of jury trials or anything like that, because the public, on the whole, still have a
relatively
sensible. I've got to say, on the whole, and for now. But again, you're right, this is really about the politics of the Lucy Connolly incident is the interesting factor, because let's not forget it was Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, that approved...
I prefer the term Lord Harmer.
Yeah, so he approved this prosecution personally. So this is the big fact, is the political aspect of Lucy Connolly, and when she was arrested and what was going on in a political context, which is what we should be bringing up.
Pete, we have been hypocrites on this subject, and I'll tell you why. Because I think his name's Ricky Jones. Forgive me if it's not right. But with him, so I'm with the Free Speech Union. I'll be honest with you, I learn a lot sitting here, no doubt as you do as well. And this thing that the Free Speech Union are talking about, which is the way they do it in the United States of America, which is you have to specifically encourage somebody to do something at a specific time and date, and then there has to be a reasonable chance of it happening.
Yeah.
So goodness me, I was about to give an example of incitement. But if I were to say now to Pete, go over to number 10 Downing Street tonight and throw a firework into the street. If I was to say that and I was serious, that would be incitement. Yeah. But if I go, oh, it wouldn't bother me if a firework hit Downing Street, then that wouldn't be, because you're not encouraging anyone to do it. It's not a specific incident with a time and whatever. And I think that is probably right.
I actually agree with you. I think that is the right way to go about things, because the one thing nobody's really kind of explained to me, who's in favour of these kind of prosecutions with all over Lucy Connolly, is what's the impact? Like, fair enough, they had 310,000 views and impressions, her tweet, before it got taken down. So what does that really mean, that 310,000 people saw it, and yet no hotel... Well, I think there was one, wasn't there?
But it wasn't as a result of that.
It wasn't as a result of it. So you've got to prove the causation between the two things.
But see, Asher Gould's view, because of I think because of people like Jihadi John and people like that, and the fact that beheadings have become more popular in Europe, more common in Europe, what a silly use of a word, more common in Europe, actually, he felt that was an incitement, and Asher Gould on a jury would have sent Ricky Jones to prison.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't
agree with that.
I'm just not of the opinion that we should be arresting people for things that they say.
Yes.
Just as a broad general rule. I don't care if you're racist, homophobic, or anything, because for me, I then know what you actually think.
Yes.
This has always been my argument: is if you just make somebody kind of say something to somebody's face, that's not their real opinion. It's why I would rather give my money to the to a company that actually believes in equality rather than ones that's forced to do it. You know, because that's not changing anything. The idea that you can legislate hate away is just preposterous, because ever since hate crime legislation was introduced, it's only ever gone up. So it's not worked. It's a policy objective.
It's interesting, actually, because of this whole. I always got taught in debating that the minute that you mention the words Adolf Hitler, you've lost the debate. Right, let's just not do that. However, it is fair to say that all of the same hate crime laws, all of the same free speech restrictions, or very similar, uniquely exist in Weimar Germany when the Nazis came to power. But what is amazing about this, and this is the point that I'd make more than anything else, genocide. When the College of Policing say that genocide is caused by hate speech, every country that's committed a genocide, think of the Holocaust, think of the Rohingya, think of the Uyghurs, all of them have denied it's happening.
Yes.
They haven't taken to the media to go, hey, we're operating a genocide. They've all just denied it. And therefore, the media bit, the free speech element. And the problem in Nazi Germany was there wasn't free speech to argue against the Holocaust. That was the problem.
That was the main problem. But also, I don't take anybody seriously politically.
I'm going to cut you down there, Pete, simply because you are staying on for a little bit longer. But if you are listening on Friday morning, then Mike Graham is coming up. Just stay with him, because honestly, it's going to be a great show. You can get in touch with Mike on 0344 499 1000. You can you can tweet at talkTV and text the word talk plus to 87222 plus your message. Mike is on right now. Go for it. Okay, if you're listening on Thursday night, then Pete, continue your point.
Oh, yes, so this is my point, is I don't take any party seriously that does not talk about, when they talk about law and order, about scrapping the College of Police.
Yes.
Unless you get rid of it, you've got to get rid of it. The top brass of every police administration has to go. They are the biggest impediment to fighting crime ever.
Do you know what I'd do? I'd go, there's not many things about American policing is good, but I absolutely love the idea. I love the idea of the national, regional and local. So for the most part, your ordinary copper on the street will be employed by your local council, and whoever runs the police will be elected in your borough.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt.
That's the way to do it.
And watch this space. Elected judges coming our way.
Oh, God, please.
I don't want them,
Pete, promote your Substack and get out.
Oh, yes, if you want to read everything that I rant about, you can find me at Stranger Views on Substack, or just search for PC Barnes 123, and you will find me pretty much everywhere.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I've just realised something, right? The producers have just told me that normally when Asher's not here, I get Danielle Nichols to fill in, right? And I've just realised I'm sat here on my own. She's coming in tomorrow night, so you get one blast of her. What they said was, honestly, I'll tell you this, they said she loves the entertainment stuff, but she'll be bored shedless if we talk about politics all night. I think that's a reasonable thing. And do you know what I like to think? I like to think that we have multiple different shows, and we get less political as the week goes on. Petri obviously has a lot more issues. We have a bit of fun towards the end of the week, don't we? Okay, look, you can phone me. It's 03444991000. Let's clear some of them because we've got no slots available at the moment. So we've got Ravel in Birmingham. Ravel, you're on Talk.
How you doing, pal?
I'm doing well. Go for it.
Basically, I just wanted to touch on your topic that you were talking about earlier about the immigration thing and everything.
Yes.
But if you come to Birmingham,
yep,
which is where I live, it is actually very segregated.
Yes.
Like you have a lot of Polish people,
yep,
and Eastern Europeans in one area. You have Indian people in another area. You know what I mean? So it's just.
I've got to be honest with you, so I don't know Birmingham that well, though funnily enough, there are people who work on the show, including Asher, who know Birmingham. But I know Slough quite well, and it's sad, really, because there are schools in Slough that have got, if you like, the Indian gang, then you've got the kind of Muslim gang, principally Pakistanis, and then you've got the Eastern Europeans.
It's like Sparkhill, you know what I mean, Sparkbrook, those are mainly Pakistani areas, or Muslim areas, should I say. But but we all get along.
Do you think so? Because for me, I'll tell you what I think is sad. So I don't like these ethnic enclaves. I like the fact that people are... Now, look, I've got to be honest with you. Right, I'm a Catholic from the northwest of England. It's not like there isn't a Catholic community. It's not like there aren't certain areas, places like Liverpool, that happen to have a very large Irish Catholic population. But I do think in general terms, it's harder to integrate if you come from an area that remains, say, Urdu speaking, where everybody is from Pakistan, where there's nothing other than Pakistani heritage, Pakistani culture, Pakistani clothing. Now, what you got
to understand, mate, is people are safe in their own communities.
Yeah, I agree with that. But see, my point being is that if you accept that we don't have a duty to let anyone from anywhere in the world move into Britain, then having effectively tribal areas, why should I think that's great?
I'm not saying, mate. I live in a part of Birmingham where, it's very mixed.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the big question that people should ask me is am I not a giant hypocrite when it comes to Polish people? And does that not make me basically a racist? And my answer to that is really simple.
I'm not a racist, mate.
No, I didn't say that. I was talking about me. I was saying that people could make that allegation against me. I think the difference is that I grew up in a town, Lee, that had more Eastern European immigration than anywhere else. And actually, culturally, people were very similar to the British. And I think it's when you get things like, so as an example, if you look at a lot of the grooming gangs, a lot of these guys just go into court and go, she dressed like an SLUT, therefore she was fair game. Now, that would have been a reasonable thing to have said in Afghanistan. It's not a reasonable thing to say in Liverpool. And I suppose there are those cultural differences. Some cultural differences are positive, but some are very much negative.
Oh, yeah, you're right in that sense, but like I said, okay, I'll give you a perfect example. Yeah. Guys go out on a Friday night, they have a couple of pints where they go for Indian.
Yeah.
Go have a curry.
True.
You know what I mean?
True, absolutely. And let's just be clear, we can remind ourselves that many of us would go to the Chinese chippy on a Friday night. But don't. I think the next question is, so as far as I'm concerned, not being particularly anti-immigration, though people probably think I am, it's then down to the numbers. I mean, when you're talking about 1 million a year, that's when you've got problems.
Right. Yeah. And obviously, you know, like it's taxpayers' money as that. I get exactly what you're coming from.
My worry, I'll tell you my other worry. You know, when we're talking about refugee status, that refugee status, look, at the end of the Second World War, we realised we'd made a big mistake not taking Jewish people from Nazi Germany. And I think people like Nick Winton, Sir Nick Winton, who took the Kinder transport, I think he evacuated about 3,500 Jewish children, when he realised that the train that got stopped the day after, all the kids end up getting gassed. That's a pretty shocking thing for Britain. But what we've done is we've ended up in a position whereby if there were to be a Holocaust today, we would not have the space to accommodate these refugees of whatever religion because of the fake people.
Yes, you're right.
Great. All right, Revel, thank you for your call. And to be fair, he is right. You know, we're all sat there going, isn't it terrible, this uncontrolled immigration? Going for a curry this Friday. Anyway, so thank you so much. Let's go for Damien in Cheshire. Damien, you're on talk.
Hello. I am in Runcorn and Halsbury.
How are you? Which way did you vote?
Reform UK, obviously. I'm a voter for Reform
Oh, okay.
UK.
So hang on a second. In your house, have they got Sarah Potchin's majority?
They not specifically in my household, but in my extended family.
Yes.
Because I voted Reform. My dad and my mum voted Reform, and they didn't vote in last year's general election. And my brother and my sister-in-law and my nephew all voted Reform as well.
Amazing. So obviously she only won by 4 votes, which is an astonishing thought. Okay, what did you call to tell me?
Well, basically, I've been thinking a lot about this asylum hotel nonsense, and I've been thinking, from my point of view, I mean, I'm quite a logical guy. We're being sold by the ruling elite, shall we say, like two-tier here. We're sold the idea that this is a humanitarian crisis.
Yes.
All of these people are fleeing from war and persecution. That's the party line, that's the narrative.
Yes, it is.
So if that's the case, then why are all these hotels making huge profits?
Well, I mean, I think the reason is, so I've got a friend of mine who's got a migrant hotel, and I'll tell you what happened to him, just to explain. So first of all, COVID basically bankrupted him, right? And he didn't have anything. And then obviously he survived COVID by taking homeless people into his hotel. And then when he came back, the place was a wreck, and he didn't have any business. What he ideally would have liked to have done was reopened as a proper hotel, but he couldn't. But he didn't do that because the amount of money that was being offered by the Home Office. Because the thing is, the reason they make such a big profit is this: you get the rack rate for 100% occupancy. So let me just explain something to you. So as imagine you see a hotel. The walk-in rate is 100 quid a room per night, and it's got 100 rooms, right? So that's 100 times 100 is 10,000, right? But they don't actually get £10,000 a night, because what they get is, and I'm not going to do the maths on this, they get 4 rooms at 100, 3 rooms at 60, 18 rooms at 95, etc., etc., and then they don't fill the full hotel. So getting 100% occupancy rack rate means that whereas they may say on a quiet night only do 4 grand, they do 10 grand every single night. But the most astonishing thing is the Home Office pay for all the staff and all the food and everything. So there's no overheads anymore apart from the rates, mortgage or rent, depending on what you're up to. So the hoteliers are bribed effectively, but they're bribed in a scenario where they were going bust because of what's taken place anyway.
No, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate what you're saying there. But what I'm saying is the government should commandeer these properties and say, right, OK, we're in an international global refugee crisis. This isn't about profit. This is about we're taking your property and we're doing this. The government would have the power to do that. They might have to,
I've got to be... So, OK, so what you're talking about is effectively emergency powers or compulsory purchase.
What I'm saying is essentially that would collapse the cottage industry of the refugee crisis overnight because there would be a mass revolt.
Yeah, but at the same time, it violates property rights which have existed in this country for 1,000 years.
Well, let's face it, Keir Starmer's doing that anyway with the farms.
Well, he is, yeah. Well, you've got me there.
And with these inheritance tax hikes and things like that, let's face it. I mean, the Marxist
but see, the weakness of your argument fundamentally is, I mean, two wrongs don't make a right on the weakening of British rights.
I get it. I'm just saying, if they just wanted to, like, we're going to end this hotel madness.
Is it just, Damien? We're going to have to move on now, but I just want to ask you this question. Is the reason why you're proposing this solution because you are very sceptical about these big security and hotel chains, about their involvement in bringing people to the country anyway?
Well, me personally, I'm of the view it's not a genuine crisis. I'd say 90% of these people that are coming over on the small boats, I'd say 90% are just trying to look.
Yes.
And basically, because we're a soft touch...
Yes.
That's why they're doing it. That's just me. I'm quite hard-nosed about the whole thing.
Well, Gawain Towler, earlier in the show, I don't know if you're watching it, from Reform UK, he said, very simple, we'll just say, if you come to Britain on a small boat, you will never be given the right to remain in the UK. That will never happen. It doesn't matter what war you're fleeing. It doesn't matter the validity of your case. You will never get the right to remain in the UK.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. But yeah, I appreciate you letting me have my opinion. And,
no problem, Damien. I'm going to cut you off, though. That's Damien in Cheshire, Runcorn, Helsby, where Reform UK won by 4 votes. And he knows the 4 people. How rare is it to actually get somebody, to actually be in a position where you and your family change the election result? Very rare indeed. 03444991000. I can see we've got 2 slots available. And Deborah is in Oldham. Deborah, you're on talk.
Hiya.
Hello.
Hiya. Right. You said about the Windrush. Yeah?
Yeah, I was talking about the Windrush.
Right. So, no, not Russia, Windrush.
Windrush, I was talking about the Windrush, yeah.
Yeah, and honest to God, my father-in-law come over here and he stalled out on a boat when he was 15 years old.
Yes.
And what he did, he just come and he just like, oh, he's amazing. He's amazing, and he works all his life.
But that's right. But people like that were brought over in order to work, whereas what we're bringing over is people in order to claim benefits. I mean, it's something like, what is it? 40% of Somalian men who come to the UK have never had a job.
Yeah, but he come anyway. So what I'm saying is, I love you. You know something, I so love you.
Thank you so much. Well, we're going to leave it there, Deborah, but I have to say, this is one thing that I'm worried about, and I think you should be worried about, and it's the charge of racism. And when I say it's the charge of racism, I'm not bothered what the crazy lefties say. I'm more bothered about the fact that people who come to this country, perhaps as the Windrush generation and others, people who work for this country, work in this country, are part of this country, love this country, we've got to be really clear that those are not the people we're complaining about by any stretch of the imagination. And it's always dangerous, that, because we don't want them to make it sound like we are just hating on people just for the sake of it, or indeed for the colour of their skin. I always look forward to this. Ali's in Leeds. Ali, you're on talk. Hello.
You all right, mate? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Yeah, good.
There's going to be, I suspect there'll be less of an argument this week because Asher's not here. But go on, tell me what you want to say.
Well, maybe because I'm not wanting to talk about what's going on in the Middle East. My point is about the illegal migrants.
Yes.
And, well, first of all, I just want to say, why do you always mention Pakistan? Like, I'll listen to you, for you always seem to mention Pakistan.
I was thinking that myself, actually. It's just because I live near Slough. That's the honest reason. So if I suspect if I was living somewhere else, I'd think more about. No, it's literally because the principal migrant population in my local town is Pakistani. But do you know what? I take your point, Ali, and I will try and be more fulsome in my criticism in future.
Yeah, it's just that, like, the small boats, they're not coming.
No, they're not coming from Pakistan.
Like, from Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Somalia, all of them. So that's the thing. But what it was is, and actually, the visa immigrants...
I'll tell you the other thing I worry about. The other thing I worry about, Ali, is by saying the Islamic world, because I think that we as the British media are very poor about saying what positive things Muslims have done for this country. And so I worry about mentioning the religion.
Yeah, I agree with that. But in terms of like how we can deal with the illegal migration crisis thing, I would say we need to try and make returns deals with the countries directly, so we can deport people directly back to the country of origin. Because I think the hotels, the return to France, the third country thing, that's not going to the only real way.
And I've got to be honest with you, Ali. So I'll tell you what. So we accepted a load of British criminals back from the United States of America when Donald Trump came in, and these were people who had moved over to America when they were kids and all this sort of thing. The big advantage with that. So you could say, well, it all works itself out. They send us criminals, we send them criminals. The good thing is, it is a massive deterrent. Also, it breaks up criminal gangs, because if people are operating as part of a criminal gang and suddenly they have to go from New York to Old York, that makes it much harder for them to operate.
Well, yeah, and also, like, the main difference is now, and my grandfather's time, when he came in the 1960s, is that he was invited to this country to help rebuild it after the cycle. And obviously his father, my great-grandfather, served the country in the British Indian Army, so he had a connection with the country and they were invited. That's why. Whereas the difference is now, they're just coming on the boats and, like, they don't really have
but if you're from a poor country and somebody says to you, we'll give you a house, we'll give you... Yeah, if somebody says that...
I have a sympathy, like, with refugees. Don't get me wrong, but I'm like, it's not sustainable, the current situation. It needs to be...
I mean, the solution... My point has always been, the solution to Libya's problems is not to move everybody from Libya to the United Kingdom. And actually, in some respects, if you look at the case of Poland, when it joined the United Kingdom, actually it created a problem in Poland, which was this. A large number of young men from Poland moved out of Poland to countries like the United Kingdom. That created a labour shortage in Poland. Now, OK, money was sent back to Poland and that helped Poland, but the actual Polish economy started to really suffer as a result. And unbelievably, Poland started advertising for Romanians to come to Poland to fill the gaps in the labour market.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. But also, I just wanted to make the point that along with returns deals, if we could make it, I also think we need to, as the Western country, need to stop destabilizing countries as well. Stop bombing them, stop overthrowing governments, stop, like, that could not, that will also...
I'll tell you the mistake we made, Ali. I'll tell you the mistake we made, this liberal interventionism thing. I've got to be honest with you, this Tony Blair idea that everybody should be treated the same and we shouldn't take any account whatsoever of different cultures, different heritages, different histories. And I have to say, you know, what we did in Afghanistan, I think, was monumentally stupid. No place on earth would have been better suited to being run by a House of Lords than Afghanistan. You could have got all of those tribal leaders together in Kabul to make the legislation. Each person has their tribal leader created in whatever way. And that would have been not a democracy, but that would have been an Afghan-centric system of government. Instead, we had elections to a national parliament that were a complete joke.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think, like, on this issue, I probably agree with a lot of what your channels say. Obviously, Israel-Palestine, I'm on the totally other side. Yeah. But I think with a lot of these issues, I would say I'd agree with you on a lot of these issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating actually with the whole Israel and Gaza thing. I mean, sometimes I want to get all of them and give them a good shake. Anyway, not a good Middle Eastern shake, a good rattle we want to give them. Okay, Ali, I'm going to leave it there simply because I'm over on the break. We'll be back with Carol just in a couple of moments. Samantha in Lancashire has sent in a message, and do you know something? She was saying that she's so worried about the illegal immigration that she's thinking of moving to Wales. And I would have read the message out, Samantha, but in it you describe Burnley as a dump, and I'm sorry, I just can't accept that. Right, I just can't accept it. Burnley is absolutely fantastic. My brother is the stadium announcer at Turf Moor, so we just can't slag off the Burnley. Can't slag it off at all. In fact, I think my uncle sponsored, my cousin sponsored Burnley for a short while, and then the business went bust, so he stopped. Okay, so let's go to Carol in Manchester. Carol, you on talk?
Oh, good morning. Can I just say about Ali as well? You know, like from Leeds, fantastic discussion between the two of you, and that's what we need, that kind of communication, that kind of thing.
Do you worry that sensible people from a migrant background are being alienated by a lot of this debate? Because I've got to say,
I know they are.
Zarina's been in touch.
I've known that for a good few decades.
Yeah, so Zarina's been in touch, and she says that she thinks that both the Pakistani and the white population are worried about foreign criminals coming into their areas.
Exactly, and I certainly, and they are. There's no doubt about it. Like, as you know, that I come from my side, come from where, and I'm living where I'm living now, and I can see points where I left my side because of kind of things that are happening where I'm living.
Yes.
And it's confusing for the people that are living here, you know, like in Tameside and whatever. And it is. And it's got nothing to do with diversity. It absolutely annoys me to a blowing up point with it. You know, like I've lived it, breathed it, witnessed it, got the T-shirt and whatever. It's got nothing to do with it. Unfortunate, like you said, you're a Catholic, I'm a Catholic.
Yeah.
I've seen many religions, right? We all live together.
Yes.
You see Chinese people, you know, like you go into Manchester, you've got Chinese town, you've got everything.
But up until when I was a kid in the 1990s, you know, almost every Catholic, certainly in the northwest of England, was of Irish descent. Now, obviously that's not necessarily true now, but if you go back further than that, there was discrimination against the Irish, and the Irish were seen as very foreign.
I live with it in my side. I lived with it.
Yeah.
Because I came Catholic when I met my husband, my beautiful, 40 years last week. We've been together and married.
Congratulations.
In November, 50 years together. We've been, like I said, we met at 15. You know, like with it, ups, downs, everything, where we go. John Bull, I was married, you know, like I was a Protestant, and my nana who brought me up, proper John Bull. And I, you know, like, and I am to a certain degree with the Queen. I've got my flag up, you've got me, what you call it, and everything. No one will ever take that away with me. And I've married an Irish man, you know, like with it.
Yes.
And we're a fantastic...
But I mean, I will say one thing about the majority of Irish people. So many members of my family are Irish Republicans in the following sense. That they love the United Kingdom. They don't accept that Ulster is part of the United Kingdom. Oh, sorry, they don't accept that Ulster ought to be part of the United Kingdom. But also, fundamentally, they don't want to war with anybody about it either. So it's up to the people.
I'll be honest, right? And I'll be honest, right? You know, like, I mean, I've met many people over my life, and regarding with Scotland, I mean, Scotland made me laugh, you know, like with Scotland and not what you can. Of course, we have our little backles, Welsh, Scotland, Ireland, but we don't kill people.
No.
We don't, what you call it, we don't behead them, we don't do this, we don't do that. And unfortunate, there is something that's going on at the moment, which is literally everybody, it don't matter if you're black, white, religion, whatever. There's only one culture that's going on at the moment, which is a bit scary. It is a bit scary, and it is, and unfortunate.
But it is worth pointing out. I mean, I remember that I did a lot of work when I worked for the MP for Morecambe with a very lovely bunch of young lads who happened to be of Syrian descent. Now they were Muslim. But there was none of that radical Islam, and I think it is worth reminding ourselves that the Islamic world's pretty diverse in of itself.
It's been there for years, like with us, like with the Catholics, with the Jews. You know, like everything. Jews are down the corner. They live in their own area.
Yes,
you
true.
know, like they stay within their own area and whatever.
Cheetham Hill and things like that.
Ever hear anything. So why is it one culture is absolutely?
Well, there's two things to Carol, there's two things to conflate here. So there is an enormous, if you like, Tommy Robinson assumption here, right? Yeah. And I'm not criticising him or supporting him, but there's a huge assumption here that that Islamic immigration equals radical Islam, right? Now, what you have to remember is that, say, as an example, in Albania, drinking alcohol is much more popular than going to mosque, as an example. If you go, I spent a lot of time in Kosovo. If you go to Kosovo, the only thing that makes you know it's an Islamic country, even if you would say that, is that they eat veal instead of pork. That's it. And so, if you have a lot of people coming from Albania, yes, that is a problem because it was a place that was abused under the communist system, and there's a lot of criminals from Albania. Yeah. But you won't see any radical Islam coming out of it, not least because.
And there isn't. And the thing is, where I'm living at the moment, and this last year we are seeing where me and my husband seen it in my side with these convenient shops and barbers and whatever.
Right.
There's nobody in there.
No.
We've got one massive road. I won't say what it is. We've got one massive road, right? I can't tell you. We've got 8 convenient shops.
Yeah.
That never. Honestly, barbers. Like. Nobody goes into it. I'm not going to say on television, I'm not stupid, and there's quite a few people here that are not, and we're complaining to our councils, why has there been no planning permission? Has there been no, what you call it, or whatever?
Well, I'll tell you what I did. I went down...
They're not coming back to us.
I went down Oxford Street to film for one of my Vox Pops absolutely years ago, and the producer texted me to say, get a box of Celebrations. You know those chocolates, the chocolate tins?
Yeah.
They're not that big anymore, and I think Tesco sell them for about £4.50, something like that. I might be wrong. But anyway, they wanted £25 on Oxford Street, which is obviously 5 times the price. But the reason they wanted £25 is because if they take £50 for a wrap of cocaine and put it in the till, they'd have to destroy 10 boxes of Celebrations in order for the stock to match with the money in the till. So if they put up the price to 25, they only have to destroy 2 boxes. That's why the prices are so high.
Yeah. But it's scary. I'll be honest, right? I'll be honest. I've never been. I always sit and I've spoke to you over the last few years and that. I think you're excellent. I really do. I'm on the same page of you. But I really am getting, because I've got kids, I've got grandkids, my kids don't even swear. I do. With it.
I swear on her.
Don't. With it. I've got very intelligent kids, very intelligent grand, and I'm worried of what the hell is our future. I've never had to worry ever in my lifetime. Never. And I'm really worried.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have to say to you, if you are bringing people over from a very alien culture, then the culture will change. That is cultural enrichment. It's just a fact.
These people that are being brought over, I mean, sensibility in my head, we're talking about it, me and my husband talk. It's a little miniature army. They're all men. If they were women and children with the grace.
Well, I mean, let's just be clear, Carol. Let's just be clear on this. Do we believe that Hezbollah, Hamas, and Boko Haram and people like that, the Islamic State, Al Qaeda, if they still exist, I don't think they really do. Do you think they've all sat there and gone, listen, lads, to be fair, those refugees in the Channel need a fair stab. Let's not infiltrate it because that's unfair, right? Oh no! Those hotels are full enough. If we were to send down 1,000 of our people, that would make it far worse for them. Of course, they're not saying that. They're saying that Britain's open borders are an enormous opportunity, and I'm worried about the following thing happen. I know that we have some of the best security services in the world, but I'm worried that in Tehran, they've got 500 people together, and they've said on, say, the 24th of December at 3 p.m, all start stabbing. All get to Britain, or if that attack has been coordinated.
What people don't realise, and I mean, I'm, you know, like, it's okay having processions, having debates, having what you call it on the roads, having what. Some of these stupid people, I'm no disrespect to them, they've not been brought up like me. And they're literally out there, you know, like Palestinian and whatever. I mean, it's absolutely horrendous. That's another thing, you know, like with it. I'm not going to go into it. But at the end of the day, you're right, they do not understand that there is this kind of culture that life is, if they die or get, you know, like, get bombed or whatever, you know, like with themselves or blow themselves up, they think they're going to go to a higher God, you know, like, and it's happened here in this country, and I don't understand why people are so naive towards
Well, I get that, but I've got to push back. I mean, first of all, I think that this migrant crisis can be infiltrated, but I also think, look, the vast majority of people who come into this country are coming here for a better life, and part of the problem is some of them are coming here for a better life on benefits. But I don't think it is a jihad in of itself. The problem is my argument has always been that if your local town becomes predominantly Urdu-speaking Muslim or predominantly Pashtun or whatever, then that in of itself is a bad thing, even if the people there are perfectly lovely. That's something. That's my view.
What do we do with the whole of the world, right? When the whole of the world, if we look at the whole of the world, and there's half of the world, right, that feel like that, we are such a tiny country, and we're getting poorer each year.
We are, yeah. OK, Carol, I do have to cut you off simply because we're well over on the break, and I have to apologise to the gallery at the end of the show. But we'll be back in a couple of moments. Oh, before we do that, it's 0344 499 1000. We've got 1, 2, 3 slots available. Back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
OK, let's get straight to it. Grace is in London. Grace, you're on Talk.
Hi. I wanted to just thought to myself after I spoke to you last week that I had neglected to say something when Tristan asked about people shoplifting.
Yes.
He asked if God would think differently about people who shoplifted because they needed food as opposed to people who were shoplifting because they wanted to sell things on and make a profit. And I was immediately thinking, I'm not sure how many people are shoplifting because they genuinely need food. So far as I've heard, most of it is about making a profit. But I was just stupidly focusing on that aspect of it. And what I should have said is that whether or not God forgives people is dependent on whether or not they choose to repent and turn to Jesus. And I know that sounds what's the word? Trite or but that's what we believe as Christians.
I think the big problem that we've got is there are two things, aren't there? And they will teach you this if you study social policy at university. There's primary and secondary poverty. So primary poverty is not having a roof over your head, not having food, not having clothing, right? Very few people in Britain are in primary poverty. Secondary poverty is not being able to afford all the things you want. So as an example, if what you were to do every day, I don't know what the cheapest thing you could eat in the supermarket, but it would probably be Happy Shopper bread and some eggs or something. Yeah. So you could probably eat that 3 meals a day and you could afford clothes. I mean, actually, that wouldn't be particularly bad if you wore the same things every day, washed them once a week or whatever. I think the issue is people want to live better, and I think that that the number of people who are shoplifting because they've literally got no money to buy food is low. What you would be talking about, I would suggest, is people who want a better quality of food than they've got money for, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, completely. Well, I mean, my real concern is that the point I want to make is all of us, though most of us haven't undertaken shoplifting or other crimes, all of us have done things wrong, and because God is so holy, we have separated ourselves from him. However, the punishment that we deserve can be paid on our behalf if we choose to take up that offer, and so each person makes that decision. If a person does decide to turn to Jesus, then they're probably definitely not going to keep on shoplifting. We don't earn our forgiveness or earn our way.
But actually, do you know, it's an interesting test of when a child becomes a teenager about the way that their brain changes. If you ask an average 10-year-old, should you steal medicine if you have a sick friend who can't afford it? They will say stealing is wrong. Binary. Stealing is wrong, and that's it. If you ask a 13-year-old, they will start to get much more into the moral debate about. I mean, depend on the age of the child. Will depend how sophisticated they are. But a general understanding that maybe profits for drug companies are less of a priority than the survival of their next door neighbour or whatever. It's an interesting subject, but I think there's always this debate though in Christianity, because what you would say is all sin is a barrier between you and God, whereas I think most people, indeed sensible people, would say there's a hierarchy, that shoplifting is not as bad as murder.
I'm not sensible, obviously. I'm not saying that there's not a hierarchy. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that all sin does put a barrier between us and God, and I think that we know deep down that we've all done things that we shouldn't have done, but we can focus on other people who've done things that are far worse because it kind of helps us to not think so much about what we've done. But the good news is that we're all offered forgiveness through what Jesus has done. And I mean that the last caller mentioned some people believing that they'll go to paradise even if they, blow other people up. And it's a contrast.
Although I don't know if you know this, because I will tell you the Muslims are the worst people at their own PR. They're just terrible at it. So I don't know if you know this, but if you blow yourself up or die in a terrorist attack, do you know no mosque in the country will give you a funeral because you're going to hell anyway? There's no point in having one. So there are these radicals like Abu Hamza and Anjam Chowdhury who preach this, but your average mosque just says, yeah, just throw them in the bin. What's left of them, they're of no value to us. And they say that a funeral would be a waste of time if you're going to hell, definitely anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, whereas some religions have the idea that one way or another, usually doing good things, but in the case of extremists within certain sectors of Islam, they think that the way you earn your way to paradise is by destroying people who aren't Muslims. Most Muslims I know don't believe that at all.
Yes, of course.
But in most religions, it's thought that you somehow earn your way to paradise or to enlightenment, whereas Jesus said that, you know, we've all sinned, but he offers us forgiveness rather than us earning it. So that's one of the contrasts. And another contrast between Islam and Christianity,
it's an interesting point.
Obviously is that Jesus and Muhammad had very different behaviours within their lives.
Yes.
So following one and following the other is quite different, in contrast to some people saying all religions
Yeah,
are the same.
one was a pacifist and one was also a military leader. I mean, that's just a fact.
But you're quite right to point out, and it needs to be said again and again, that an awful lot of Muslim people are fantastic. And
I think one of the big difficulties. I think one of the big difficulties you've got is this: when you are talking about a foreign culture, if you like, or a religion that is not indigenous to this country, it's very easy to conflate two things. When somebody walks up to me, I went to this speaker meeting and I rebuked the people who attacked Charlie Hebdo and all this sort of thing, and at the end people were going, one day, brother, you will be a Muslim. Right. Now, people can see that as a very threatening thing to say. That's not what they meant at all, right? So when, obviously, inherent within anyone's religion is a belief that they're making the world a better place by following it. And so what happens is you get these radical Muslims who try and convert people by the sword. There's not many of them. And then your average Muslim who just wants to make a good account of their religion because they quite like new people to join it, seem like they're the same thing, whereas in fact they're on two completely different planets.
Yeah, well, ultimately, each person is an individual with their own brain, and I think it's partly, I think, because we've got so much information coming at us all the time, we're all the more prone to overgeneralise than we might otherwise be.
I think that's right.
Yeah, I think if we can really disagree about all sorts of things as white British people, and so we should take into account.
I've also made the point. Once again, it's on my YouTube channel somewhere, Andre JP Walker. And once again, I mean, I don't want to go on about Tommy Robinson, but I just think that I made a video about him, which I thought was quite an interesting thing to say, because I think the problem that you've just highlighted there is something that we do have a major problem with. And it's this: it's not anecdotal evidence. That would be unfair, but it's this idea of what does something prove. So as an example, you know, Tommy Robinson talks about segregation, talks about radicalisation, he talks about effectively ethnic cleansing, and all of that may well be true. In fact, I'm sure it is true what he says, but also he comes from the ward in the United Kingdom that's had more Islamic immigration than anywhere else in Europe, right? So just because all the things that he's noticed in his area are true doesn't mean that it's coming to a road near you. And I think that one of the problems we often have, and certainly I have it with debates about the NHS, is when you go, is the NHS failing? You get a large number of people who phone up and go, when I went there, it was perfectly nice. And you think, yeah, but you are one person, and this is the experience of one person. And so my point being this, that we will always be in a situation when there's modern media of seeing an example that doesn't really prove a rule.
Yeah, completely. And we can very easily feel an emotional reaction to something we've seen or we've witnessed and not necessarily take into account the statistical proof one way or the other. And I think we're really privileged to be in a culture that has been impacted by Jesus' teachings of pacifism and caring for and valuing other human beings, I mean, the last caller was saying there's just one culture that's a problem. Unfortunately, she's really wrong. All kinds of cultures have had all kinds of
Well,
problems.
I'll tell you what, Grace, I am going to cut you off simply because we've got to go to a break, but I will tell you one thing. You know, my family are from Northern Ireland, and there will always be loonies who want to either convert people by force or kill people who are members of the religion or the denomination next door for whatever reason, but that will always happen. It does happen in every religion. More next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
OK, just wanted to remind you that Asher Gould is on holiday. He hasn't disappeared. He's disappeared. He's disappeared from here. Where's he gone on holiday, Gallery? He's gone to Eastbourne. What's he going to do? Hang around on his own like Miss Marple or something? OK, well, obviously, what I've just been told in my ear was obviously true. The Goulds have got a holiday home. By the way, I've just realised something. Telling people that Asher Gould's dad was richer than God is a mistake. He doesn't like anybody knowing that. So now we've just destroyed that. Apparently, his house in Birmingham looked like the home of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But anyway, we have now outed him as a gazillionaire. His mum lives on Bishop's Avenue. Right, don't track her down. OK, so what was I going to say? I was going to say that somebody has said to me that their life has been brilliant ever since they took my advice in January, which I think was to create a YouTube channel, which is Englishman Talks. Also, we've had loads of people getting in touch saying that me and Pete are a lovely little team, sort of lovely little gang and all that sort of thing. Anyway, what about this? Free university courses for UK migrants. Earl says that he's not very happy, but he also, in his message, copied and pasted the words switch to AI mode, so we now know that the message he sent was written by ChatGPT. Do not do that, Earl. It's a very long message as well, and I want to thank you nonetheless. Do HMOs pay council tax? I think yes, they do. If not, why not? They do pay council tax. Thank you to all your messages. Let's go to Ken in London. Oh, Ken, you've arrived at the right time, no doubt. Grace, I think what happened, Ken, was you weren't going to phone, and then Grace came on, and you just couldn't help your little self, could you?
No, she made some very good comments about biblical Christianity. I appreciated that. Very well done, Grace. But I would like to talk about. I attended 2 protests in the past few weeks.
Okay.
One was the Muslim support of Hamas,
yes.
Pro-Hamas support. Another was the Jewish protest for the release of the hostages.
Yeah.
There was 2 definite different atmospheres at these protests, Andre.
Yes.
At the Muslim protest, it was filled with the vicious presence of hatred
Yes.
and evil. It was openly manifest against Israel and the Jews, with young children, women chanting, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." They actually mean free from Jews. It was evil. Now, the other protest I marched with the Jewish people, and there was a big turnout. It was very peaceful.
Now, of course, remember that, I mean, most Jews believe Jesus existed. I think you'd be a bit silly to not believe he existed, because it's fairly obvious he did. But all Jews do not believe that he is the Messiah. And so the reason I make that point is, for you to have found it very, very different in the two atmospheres, both of these religions disagree with you, and it's interesting that only on one of the protests did you feel that it had an unpleasant atmosphere.
In the Jewish protest, no.
Correct. Yeah.
There was nothing unpleasant. There was no signs of the malicious hatred towards the Muslims. It was just they were concerned about the release of the hostages.
I always think, Ken, that we are idiots for forgetting that there is an important difference about being motivated by love and being motivated by hate. And I think that if you are motivated by the love and desire to help your fellow man, then that has always got to be, whatever the outcome, something that's very different to just being bitter and hate-filled.
Correct.
And I think that's something that you believe.
Of course, the two commandments are first to love God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. That's the God of the Bible. And the second one is like unto it, to love your neighbour as yourself. Now, if you don't mind enough, if you give me another couple of minutes here, I'd just like to talk
I can give you about two, because we're running short of time, but go for it, Ken.
Nigeria, just the latest statistics about Nigeria. 32 Christians are killed every day in Nigeria by Boko Haram and other Islamists. 7,800 children have been abducted. 125,000 Christians have been killed since 2009. There's a silent genocide in Nigeria, and the media is totally silent.
Yes.
No mention, no protests, nothing mentioned. When they've been slaughtered in Africa, there's other countries too in Africa, Congo, Tanzania, Mozambique, they've been slaughtered.
Ken, I'll tell you one thing that I find more despicable than anything is the ignoring of the slave markets where female children are sold off to perverts.
Well, listen, Andre, thanks for letting me speak tonight, but listen, Andre and everybody who's listening here, Jesus is literally returning soon. The Bible says, repent and believe in Jesus Christ and be saved. I plead with everyone, don't shut your ears to this good news. Christ died for every sinner. He rose from the dead. He's coming back.
OK, thank you, Ken. And by the way, Ken is absolutely right. What is going on in Nigeria is absolutely disgusting, and we don't care. And the reason we don't care is because the victims are Christian. Fact. Alison, you've got the final 2 minutes and you're in Buckinghamshire.
Oh, good afternoon. Good evening.
Yeah, don't worry. Go for it. Go for it. It's my afternoon. It's my afternoon. Don't worry about it.
Well, basically, you're saying about multiculturalism working. I don't think it is. It would only work if everybody didn't try and influence others.
Yes.
I haven't had very nice experience. I'm with a Muslim partner. We've been together 9 years.
Right.
And I don't get treated very well.
By his community?
Yeah. And when I'm out with him, the looks that I get, and not only from Asian women, but I also get insulted by white women.
It's interesting, actually. I had a friend of mine whose son dated an Asian girl. I don't know what her religion was. And they said, oh, her mum's not very keen. And I said, well, can you imagine if you as a white woman said, oh, I just don't like my son's dating Asians. Right, if you were to say that, you'd be cast out as evil, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is I'm not even allowed to, with his family, I have nothing to do with them, not by my choice.
Right.
but I'm not even allowed to park on the drive.
Really?
Yeah, I can't, no, don't bring her here. Don't bring her here.
And is that because you refuse to convert to Islam?
Yes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, that's his dad wants me to convert, but I said to my partner, if I convert, because he's not a practicing Muslim, and he doesn't believe in a lot of it. He doesn't think it's right, and he said that they do want to take over Britain. That is their aim, and they will carry on till they get it.
Yeah, but I mean, when they say take over Britain, what they're talking about is converting people to their religion. I mean, it's not by force.
But I said to my partner as well, by the way I've been treated, does he really think that I want to go into that?
Yeah. All right, look, Alison, I'll tell you what the gallery said to me. They've said, can you please phone back tomorrow?